Shaggy was a little disappointed. After the guard in the hallway was dealt with, he and the professor managed to get away easily. No mad dash to the car. No epic fight with a sudden wizard headmaster. Not even an awkward run-in with some wizard teens. They made it across the quad, around the dormitories and back out the way they came with no issue. Sure, there were a few guards wandering around, but the professor led them around the outliers easy enough. Then it was a quick jog through the tall grass and back into the car. Now they were slowly driving down a dark road back to Austin. Well, Shaggy was driving. The professor had a marker out and was writing some runic nonsense on the ceiling. Shaggy had wanted to ask, but he was afraid of breaking Prof's concentration. He figured it was something to help them get away, like a speed rune or an invisibility glyph. Some magic nonsense. When the professor was finished drawing, he placed his non-robotic hand against the roof and closed his eyes. Shaggy could almost feel the magic as it poured into the car, and he readied himself for a burst of speed. Instead, the professor finished whatever he was doing and slumped in his seat. Shaggy gave it a few seconds. But when nothing explosive happened, he had to ask, "What was that all about? Should help us avoid scrying until we get back home. The hangar has enough protections to keep me safe. Will they already be able to scry us?" The professor shook his head. "No. But you can never be too careful. My taser eggs don't knock people out for long. So one guard we knocked out could get up and raise the alarm. But with the rune on the car, we should be safe. As far as I know anyway." Shaggy dragged his eyes to the mark on the ceiling of the car, but he could barely make it out in the dark. "You don't sound too sure, document." "'Cause I'm not. I haven't really read much on anti-scrying runes or spells. Jarlock just got his study situated. Not to mention he is stingy as hell with his books. So roughly, how much time would you give us? Should I be going faster in case your chicken scratch doesn't help?" "Well, we collected the wires from both guards, closed the door to the lab, moved the guards to less suspicious areas. So if we get very lucky, we won't have to worry until morning. And worst case scenario? The guards have already woken up and alerted the wizards that something fishy is going on. They'll investigate. See your handiwork on the door. Perform a search for any hair follicles or skin flakes. Once they have some, they'll start performing a mass scrying spell." The professor trailed off and Shaggy cut his eyes to the passenger seat. The lizard player had his chin in his hand and was tilting his head from side to side. Shaggy waited impatiently for the professor to finish his thought. But the moment dragged on, so Shaggy urged, "Then?" The professor snapped out of his musing and looked over at Shaggy. "Oh, sorry, was just trying to remember what I read about scrying. It's not really an exciting subject. Not quite the same as remote viewing or any other sensory power. But still powerful. I was trying to guess the likelihood that they'd try for a remote viewing spell. It'd take longer. But this little rune ain't going to help with remote viewing." "Why not?" "Remote viewing is like putting a physical, invisible eye somewhere. Scrying is more like a satellite in the sky. The rune masks us with interference. But that would be useless for remote viewing. We'd have to find and poke out the eye," Shaggy said, nodding. "Gruesome, but not untrue. For now, let's assume that they go with the easier option and start a scrying spell. They'll want it to cover a large area. So they'll either need multiple wizards or a large artifact to help them. Then they'll begin the ritual, which takes..." The professor scratched his scaly head. "Was it 45 minutes or an hour?" Shaggy grit his teeth. "Work with the smallest timeline you got, Professor." "Oh, good idea, so let's say 30 minutes. We will have 30 minutes after they discover what we've done. My taser eggs can knock a person out for 15 minutes at the low end. And I punched that first guard in the head. So let's add another 15 there." The professor leaned down to get a look at the clock in the car's dash. So, as of now, we have 20 minutes before the guard wakes up. Add in time to report his findings. The wizard's investigation. And the search for clues. That means we have an hour to get as far away as possible. As safely as possible. So slow down. Shaggy jolted and eased his foot off the pedal. As the professor was doing his mental math, Shaggy had been practically stomping on the gas. The car slowed and Shaggy blew out a breath as he kept his eyes on the dark road ahead. They had a decent drive ahead of them. The last thing they needed was to get pulled over by the cops. He heard the professor sigh and glanced over to see the big lizard player. Closing his eyes. "Oh no. Don't you dare pass out on me, Doc. I have a long drive and I'm already amped from the escape." This was more nerve-wracking than just running in and breaking shit, then running out. "If I gotta be up, so do you." The professor snorted and kept his eyes closed. "Calm down, I'm not sleeping. I'm going over the formula in my head and trying to get all the chemicals down. Like I said before, whoever you got it from had to use a lot of random chemicals to get it to work. I want to know if those are required or if we can actually replace them with better variants. It also contains a lot of stuff I can't identify. Maybe it's some magical game mechanic stuff that makes the mixture work? By the way, do you want to write it down for me? My wolf is happily asleep." The professor nodded quickly before diving into the car's glove compartment. Looking for something to write with. As he came away with a pad, he asked Shaggy his own question. "You've mentioned that before, you're wolf. Do you have like an alter ego or something, because you're a werewolf?" Shaggy sighed. "It's a long story, but you're not far off. The short of it is that I have a cantankerous mutt inside of me. Whenever I wolf out, we kind of share the driver's seat. But when I'm human, the damn thing stays inside and growls or barks at whatever is going on outside. Do all wars have it?" The professor muttered as he hunched over his paper. "Not as far as I know. I haven't met any other player wars though. According to my wolf sensei, it happens. But only in pure blood wars. I'm a mutant, so having one is odd. But probably not unheard of. Man, pure bloods are apparently a huge thing in this game." "What do you mean?" "Well, pure blood is incredibly important to some magical families. It's a way from them to exclude the more mundane. So they can focus on creating the strongest magical lines." "Hee hee." Shaggy chuckled. "Well, people were always going to find ways to exclude others. It's what we do. If the game was a utopia, there'd be nothing for us to do." "Fair. It's just interesting to see how the game grew. I mean, multiple magic families. Differently tiered magical societies. Not to mention there were communities. Everyone is slightly separated, yet still a part of the whole. Also, you have your little hunter community out where you are. What's up with that? Just a group that were in Austin before the HLO moved in and turned being a hero into a business. They aren't too happy with the HLO, so they are giving our group a chance. Which is great, but means a lot of paperwork. I really don't envy you heroes. I play games to get away from the paperwork." "Meh. It ain't so bad. Fill out a form here, stop a demonic incursion there. It all evens out. It's all a part of living and playing in this world." Shaggy nodded, and they fell into silence. The sound of the professor scribbling out the formula was the only noise in the car. Shaggy was getting worried about how long the professor was writing. But when he glanced over, he realized the studious lizard was writing something else now. A section of paper had been torn off and placed onto the car's dashboard, and Shaggy could see a writing on it. "So now what are you working on?" "Just seeing if any other chemicals in my, admittedly limited, knowledge could work with this formula. But I think you were right. Some of these reactants are liquid, but I don't recognize the molecular formulas. Then there's the catalyst. It's annotated here by the spectrometer, but I'm out of my depth on what the hell it is, or even if there is only one catalyst. Is all that implanted knowledge is some of that you, Doc? My head already hurts listening to you. Hopefully Vlad has already found an egghead to do this for us. It's all the game. I mean, I know basic chemistry from school. But this is leagues over that. The professor said, tapping his pen against his lizard lips. Shaggy nodded and reached for the slim strip of paper on the dash. Better to have it on him. It was when his hand grabbed the paper that a large body slammed into the road ahead of him. Shaggy eyes went up to the rune drawn into the ceiling as he slammed onto the brakes. The car jerked to a stop and the professor's seatbelt caught him roughly. Shaggy, however, went headfirst into the steering wheel. He grunted as the hard steering wheel stopped his momentum for a few seconds, then snapped under his heavy head. A man in armored clothing pulled himself from the street and gave them both a half-hearted smile. Shaggy bared his teeth as he rubbed the spot where his forehead hit the steering wheel. The soup in the street grimaced as he looked at their car, not knowing what to do. Which cost him, as a green energy beam came screaming out of the night and caught the poor guy in the side. He tumbled off the road as Shaggy and the professor looked at each other. Have no fear, citizens. The malcontent has been taken care of, called a woman's voice from the night sky. Shaggy merely grunted as he got the car rolling again. The professor stuck his head out the window and gave the flying soup a wave, which Shaggy thought was completely unnecessary. Thankfully, the hero didn't make them wait around as they got back on the road. Shaggy jammed the paper with the formula into his pocket and placed his hands on the now bent wheel. He heard the professor swear again as he collected his notes from the car's floorboard. When he was finished, he glanced over at Shaggy. You're paying to fix the wheel. That wasn't my fault. Some dingus came flying out of the sky. What was I supposed to do? Keep driving? Then you'd be paying for a whole car. You could have worn a seatbelt and not fractured a damn steel steering wheel. Who's to say the seatbelt would have caught my heavy ass? I may be short, but I'm dense. Pfft. I'm aware. Not what I meant, you scaly bastard. Seriously, you're paying for the repairs. Oh, come on, dude. The pair continued to argue as they drove into the night. Wizards forgotten and ill-gotten gains safely secured. As they argued, Shaggy's mind drifted to the note in his pocket and all the possibilities for his crew. An army of serum-powered lackeys. It was going to be a hell of a game-changer. Shaggy slid to a stop in the dirt. The slide that led out into Undertown wasn't very steep, but it shot you out at quite the speed. A few people moved aside as Shaggy caught himself and stood up. After returning to the hangar with the professor and getting his copy of the formula, Shaggy immediately came back home. He had ran the entire way to the nearest Undertown entrance and raced inside. The mage Jarlock had cast some kind of spell that told him no scrying had been done to Shaggy or the professor yet. So Shaggy thought it best to hurry back home, hoping the underground town would provide some cover. Should have asked if that was how it works. Shaggy grumbled to himself. He pushed his way down Main Street. The long main road was full of shoppers and vendors, all shouting and arguing about various things. Now that Shaggy was looking for them, he could spot the various guards from the different gangs. The Racks and Freaks were patrolling up and down the large street. Even the Brute clan had a few lizards out and standing next to different stalls. The UGB was also out in force, but they were a little harder to spot. Shaggy thought they looked like plainclothes police. Shirts and jackets bulging with obvious armor worn under the clothes. Weapons were a little too clean or too new to be from Undertown. The UGB thugs themselves were even easier to spot. They all had the same ugly sneer on their faces as they looked at the throng of black market buyers. Shaggy kept his head down and continued to push northward toward the arena. He was going to have to cut east at some point. But he wanted to get a look at the Quinnica territory first. When he got to their section of the main road, he wasn't surprised. Abandoned stalls and empty swathes of the street met his gaze. The area was littered with trash, junk, and even a body or two. He walked around the block a little, to see what he could find. But the entire thing was abandoned. Houses stood empty, and even the few weird black tents were left empty. Shaggy was more surprised that no one had looted the tents themselves. But he chalked it up to the local population, afraid of the Quinnica. He finished his walk around and started jogging toward the bar. Undertown had bounced back well from the cog invasion and the random gang fights. Although, Shaggy guessed that was the nature of the best in the underground city. Things were always in flux as the people at the top tried to hold on for dear life. Shaggy tried to think about how their own gang was going to fit into that structure. But he really couldn't picture it. Carving a piece of Undertown for themselves was fine, but did they really want to run everything down here? By this point, Shaggy had expected to see more players down here making moves. But so far, they had heard nothing. Then again, they weren't exactly looking into other areas. As big as they were currently, they didn't have the manpower to scout other areas with regularity. For all Shaggy knew, there could be several factions of players down in Undertown, all trying to take over their own little corner of things. He hadn't been aware of the RP bar. Although he didn't imagine any of them taking over their own section of Undertown. But anything was possible. After several blocks and multiple failed mugging attempts, Shaggy finally made it back to the square around the bar. His pockets were a little heavier with credits and his claws and clothes were bloodier. As usual, the square was packed with various people. Some were heading toward the large wooden bar. Others were wandering around, talking to people, or visiting one of the shops or carts facing the square. To Shaggy's surprise, the normal line of people looking to get into the bar was joined by another line of people. As Shaggy approached, he noticed that the second line was wrapping around the building and into the square from the western side of the bar. He didn't recall an entrance on that side of the building. As he jogged around to get a better look, he spotted several lackeys patrolling the square. Some gave him nods of acknowledgement, while others stared at him curiously. When he rounded the corner of the bar, he saw a long line of people entering the bar. At several spots were small handmade signs. He had to push closer to see, and when he did, he had to stifle a laugh. The signs were calling for doctors or other technologically inclined people to join them. Things like well-paid and opportunities for rapid advancement made Shaggy think that Slink had written the signs. When some people started giving him dirty looks, Shaggy shook his head and walked back around to the front. He was led through past the line waiting to be seated and entered the bustling bar. The smell of cooked meat and fried potatoes filled his nose. Shaggy had to push past a few servers and other staff, but he made his way to the bar. He expected to find Petra there, but all he found were a few more bar employees. Including a stout-looking minotaur, who gave him an awkward wave, his voice booming over the crowd. "Boss?" The other, boss is in the infirmary, doing the interviews." Shaggy gave the minotaur a nod and thanks and started pushing past more patrons. Several hurriedly got out of his way. Others seemed stunned at the minotaur's pronouncement. But Shaggy figured they would catch on quick enough. More and more people were going to learn who they were with time. All he had to do was wait and the Legion's name would grow. Shaggy moved around the still empty stage to the hallway behind. The murmur of voices dropped as his head peeked in. The line from the side entrance was coming down the hallway and leading into the Needle Sisters' old infirmary. Shaggy smiled as he spotted an old friend guarding the door. "Tinsel? Is that you?" The NPC Paranadan turned at the sound of his name. Seeing Shaggy, the big rhino man grinned. "Boss? Great to see you're back. You here to help with this lot? Vlad, Slink, and Petra are already in there." Shaggy raised an eyebrow. "What about Ren?" "Went off to handle something, I think. But they need all the help they can get with these interviews, you know?" Shaggy nodded as he peered at the long line of people. "Whose idea was this, anyway?" "I thought Ren and Dave were looking for a doctor." "They were, and they found a guy, but he wasn't interested in joining up. So Slink thought we'd try to recruit from the community." "Hell of a turnout." "Yeah. Good pay, and our rep seems to have brought out a few gems. Tinsel smiled. Before Shaggy could inquire further, a small furry humanoid burst from the infirmary door. It chittered and squawked angrily as a loud hissing noise came from the floor. Shaggy looked down to see Mo harassing the alien's feet. The alien backed away as Mo hissed and darted his large orange head back and forth. Once the alien was a suitable distance away, Mo headed back inside. The furry alien gave a final and especially loud squawk of indignation before it rushed out the side door. Well, Tinsel said, smile gone. We've also had a lot of duds looking for handouts. Shaggy gave the enormous NPC an understanding nod. Patting the big guy's shoulder, he pushed his way into the infirmary. The person in line tried to say something, but Tinsel's enormous foot thudded to the floor roughly, stopping any words. As the door swung open, Shaggy was immediately met with an irate-sounding Vlad. We haven't called for the next one yet. Give us a minute to clean up in here. Curious, Shaggy rushed into the infirmary and looked around. Vlad, Slink, and Petra were all seated at a long table. Across from the three were 4 chairs where the applicants were supposed to sit. But all 4 chairs were knocked over and the table was a mess of papers and what looked like water. Vlad was wiping himself off as Slink took off the large robe he was wearing. Even Petra was sopping up some of the liquid that was on her shirt. Shaggy gave the air a few tentative sniffs and he recoiled. The liquid didn't smell like water. What is that? He asked, shocked. It's spit. Petra said through clenched teeth. It doesn't smell like spit, Shaggy said. It's spit, all 3 voices shouted at him. Shaggy put his hands up and started picking up the chairs. As he did, the others got themselves cleaned up as best they could. Eventually, he had to ask. So why did you let him walk out of here, then? I mean, if he spit on you? Why not just kill him and hang him out by the door? Vlad sighed, as he eventually took off his shirt and threw it in a corner. See, this is why I am happy you weren't here for these. We are trying to engender goodwill here, Shaggy. Slink said as he tentatively swiped a hand through his hair. I get that. But we are also a gang. We are allowed to take a rough stand every now and again. Someone disrespects us, and we nail his nuts to the wall. It's expected. Bodies are never good business, Shaggy. Maybe not. But I'm not the one covered in spit. Petra slumped in her chair and looked pissed as she nodded along. I know where that little bastard lives. He's always trying to have food delivered. I keep telling him that's not a service we provide. Maybe we can arrange for an accident? Shaggy pointed at the scaly woman happily. See? Our business manager thinks it's a good idea? Also, why are you a part of this, Petra? Not that I'm angry, I just thought you were more focused on the legitimate side of things. Before Petra could answer, Slink spoke up. Actually, both the infirmary and the workshop are going to be legitimate businesses, Shaggy. So I thought Petra's input would be helpful. Not to mention you weren't here. Ren logged off, and Dave is off playing with his crew. He's training, Vlad. Slink rolled his eyes as he took his seat. Vlad snorted but returned to his own chair and started collecting papers. Goofing off is what he is doing. He should be here helping us find useful people. After they all got themselves and the room cleaned up as much as possible, Shaggy moved behind Petra. He checked a few of the papers she and the others were holding. But it just looked like a bunch of random facts, with names scrawled above them. Slink was a little neater in his note-taking, but it looked like each of them had written a few words on each candidate so far. Shaggy sighed. So what are we looking for, exactly? Slink sat back in his chair and glanced at Vlad before speaking. Well, first we were scouting for a doctor and some staff. But then Vlad came back from topside and started talking about getting a workshop going. So we've kind of been interviewing for both spots. Rold's thrown his hat into the ring, but few people around here trust him right now. After the shit with the Quinnica. So we want people with tech and medical experience to come work for us? Vlad nodded. I figured that would help with the formula, right? I mean, the professor had a bunch of equipment in that lab of his, right? But even he still needed some special equipment. I figured what we can't steal, a good workshop could make for us. Which makes sense if we had the material. Thanks to the bots and the abandoned shacks, we have plenty of metal. But I don't know about low-grade electronics. We can always do a walk to the dump, you know? Slink argued. How did that go for you last time, Slink? Shut up. We'd be fine now. Besides, it doesn't have to be a K-Tech dump site. Shaggy gave a short growl. None of that matters if we can't get ourselves staffed up. So what are we looking for? Petra gave a short cough, drawing all of their attention. When she saw she had it, she said. We need a head doctor. Preferably one with abilities or a high level of skill. Then we need a nursing staff and maybe a few alternates for the doctor. For the workshop, we need the more mechanically inclined powers. Technopaths, technology manipulators, and maybe even a mad scientist. We could settle for the mundane blacksmiths or other metalworkers, but I don't think they'll be able to keep up with what we need. Shaggy grunted. What are the chances we'll find anyone like that down here? Petra grimaced. Doctors are actually easy to find. At least people with low-tier healing abilities will be easier to find. But the real trick is finding someone trustworthy that we can build a team around. And the workshop? Vlad asked. Petra bit her lip as she looked at them all. We probably won't find any technopaths in Undertown. Most of them are scooped up, topside. The pay is just too good when they go to work for a big-name company. We might find a few manipulators, but they rarely have the technical know-how of a technopath. But the biggest problem with the workshop idea is going to be resources. We can't just make everything with metal. We can supplement whatever we need with stuff that we steal topside. But I think I get what you're saying. Shaggy nodded. Shaggy went to grab a fourth chair to join and set it up next to Vlad. As he did, he heard Vlad ask Petra a question. Wait. You didn't say anything about mad scientists. How likely are we to find one in Undertown? Petra snorted. Pfft. They're a dime a dozen down here. All sorts of wannabes come down here. All looking for illegal goods to help with their nonsensical machines. But that's not the tricky part. What is the tricky part? Slink asked. They are mad scientists, boss. You've seen Rold. Sure, the kid is saner than most, but he is still a megalomaniac more at home with his robots than people. I imagine we have a few in the line outside, all itching for a chance to brag about their latest invention. Well, all we need is one. Shaggy nodded as he grabbed a sheet of paper from Vlad. Anyone got a spare pen? You're seriously going to sit with us through these interviews? Vlad asked as Petra handed Shaggy a spare pen. Yeah, why not? This is all for the Legion, right? Besides, I have a few hours before I have to log, anyway. So why not spend it interviewing a few wackados? Vlad shrugged at Shaggy's words as Slink got himself ready. Petra gave them all a pitying look before she shouted at the door to the infirmary. Okay, Tinsel. We're ready. Send the next couple in. Shaggy smiled as the sound of the door opening was quickly followed by thudding footsteps. A few aliens entered the room and Shaggy put on his best business smile. The smile instantly froze as the last man walked into the room. A man in just his underwear, wearing a cape and a garbage can lid for a hat. But the most alarming thing about the man wasn't his clothes. It was the 3-foot-long massive pink worm he had in his dirt-covered hands. A worm that, for some reason, was dressed in a modified tuxedo with a matching top hat. Shaggy heard Petra sigh as the man took his seat. The other applicants dragged their chairs away from the man as he rubbed his pet worm. Shaggy swore he saw the worm shiver under the man's touch and he averted his gaze. Shaggy heard Vlad and Slink rapidly start writing things down as they avoided eye contact with the man. He shared a look with Petra before he sighed and tried to get things underway. But the old half-naked man was ahead of him. So. My name is Erasmus P. Gentlefrapple, and this is Darla. We are ready to take it to the hoity-toity elite in the above ground. We will show everyone the glory of the underground race. Erasmus ended his tirade on his feet, Darla wriggling back and forth in his hands. The three other applicants were now actively trying to push further away from the man. Shaggy gripped his nose in his fingers and put his elbow on the table. All four of them at the table shared a look before collectively sighing. It was going to be a long couple of hours. Unhand my creation, you quack. It's got me. You damn demented hamster. I am not a hamster. You filthy human. Birdie, rip his arms off. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The 5-foot robot twisted the taller human's arm at an odd angle. Vlad jumped over the table and started wrestling the robot away as the doctor screamed in pain. Meanwhile, Shaggy sighed and gave the other two applicants an apologetic look. They both gave him awkward smiles as they pushed their chairs away from the impromptu wrestling match. Next to him, Petra had her head down on the table, ignoring everything going on. Don't hurt my baby, you knaves. That is state-of-the-art equipment. If it's damaged, you'll owe me 40,000 credits for the power supply alone. Shaggy glanced at the spindly droid. As it tried to escape Vlad's grip, bits of rusted metal fell on the infirmary floor. Its wires sparked and the visible gears clanked audibly. Shaggy grunted and stood. It wasn't the first time he had to escort a scientist's creation out, and it probably would not be the last. As he approached, Vlad gave him a stern look, but he ignored it. The vampire was being far too diplomatic with troublemakers, in Shaggy's opinion. He'd already let a few arrogant scientists belittle and curse their organization. Shaggy snatched the humanoid robot from Vlad by the neck and lifted it. He brought the struggle robot around to its creator's face. The furry alien was sputtering and gnashing its large teeth in anger as Shaggy smiled at him. When he was sure he had the hamster alien's attention, Shaggy shook the robot roughly. A loud clanging filled the infirmary as the shoddily built robot fell apart in his hands. The short, round hamster alien ballooned out his cheeks and chittered. You brute. That was years of high-intensity work. Why, I have half a mind to go to the authorities. I demand you pay me right this instant for the damages to my robot and for the mental trauma you have caused. Shaggy growled low in his throat as Slink moved the human doctor away. Yeah. That's not happening. You need to go, darnum Stankwuzzle. The hamster's eyes opened wide. That's not my name, you Neanderthal. My name was. I don't care. Leave, damn it. Before I eat you. Shaggy roared. The hamster alien huffed and glared up at Shaggy. The two held glares for a dozen seconds before the hamster finally looked away and trudged away. Shaggy gave Vlad his best smug grin and was about to return to his seat when the small hamster alien spun back around. A large bulbous pistol in his hands. Fools. Did you think I came to this meeting unprepared? This was an interview. Shaggy muttered as he put himself in the gun's path. Irrelevant. I will not be made a fool of by a bunch of low IQ plebeians. You all are going to give me the recognition I deserve before. Shaggy sighed and flicked his finger against the bulbous middle of the large pistols. The material cracked under his strike and a purple liquid sprayed out of it. The liquid hit the hamster square in the face and he started sputtering and choking. Shaggy felt his finger sting slightly, and he glanced at it. The skin melted away and then regrew before his eyes. Unfortunately for the alien, he didn't have Shaggy's healing. The poor guy was sputtering and choking as his face and fur were melting away. Shaggy glanced up at the others in the room and shrugged. Looking at the three other applicants in the room, he asked. Any of you doctors want to help him out? The tall human man the hamster had been arguing with looked down at the writhing hamster and then back up to Shaggy. The answer on his face was a clear no, and judging by the looks on the two applicants, they weren't going to help either. Shaggy looked at his two friends in the room. Vlad was glaring at him. Probably for killing the hamster. But Slink was back to his seat at the interview table, looking over his notes. The young boy dragged his pen through a long line of notes he had just made. Probably on the still choking hamster. Jesus, Shaggy. End it. I don't need to hear the guy's death rattle. Vlad said, annoyed. Shaggy moved over to the sputtering mad scientist and stomped on the short alien's neck. Hey, don't take that tone with me. I gave you the chance to eject the guy. You were the one taking forever. I never thought I'd have to say this in an interview room, but stop killing people. We've been at this for 2 hours now, and you've killed 4 scientists. Yeah, but we've hired 3 nurses. Vlad shook his head, confused. What does that have to do with anything? I don't know. How the hell are you scoring this? I just figured that I've scored 3, and I'm down 4. Which overall ain't bad. Damn it, Shaggy. We've lost people from our line, 'cause you keep throwing corpses into the hallway. Then they don't have the stomach for what we do. It's good that they know now before they join up and have to deal with stuff like this daily. Shaggy said, reaching down and picking up the dead hamster alien. Shaggy. No. Not the hallway. Vlad started. Vlad, where do you want me to throw the body? We can't leave him in here. Vlad groaned loudly, but before he could say anything, the human doctor spoke up. Actually, if none of you care, I can take the body. Shaggy and Vlad turned to the doctor. Even Petra and Slink picked their heads up from the table. The doctor coughed awkwardly under all of their gazes. He wrung his hands together and hurriedly tried to explain. I just mean, alien corpses are a fount of knowledge. Regardless of what I learned in medical school, there is always more to learn about alien biology. There are interesting variants in almost every alien species we know of, and I'd really like to study this one. Sure. Fine. Whatever. You take him. Shaggy said, roughly thrusting the dead alien into the human's arms. The other 2 interviewees were shooting the doctor dirty looks. But he ignored them as he tried to get a firm grip on the dead body in his arms. Vlad sighed loudly and moved back to his seat. Shaggy joined him and all 4 of them at the table got ready to continue the interview. Ahem. So where were we? Shaggy asked as he checked his notes. Unfortunately, they weren't really helpful. He stopped taking notes a few interviews back and started doodling. So as he stared at a crude drawing of him, strangling faceless stick people, Vlad tried to get the interview back on track. Dr. Clock was telling us about his area of expertise. Although I'm guessing necromancy? The tall, dark-haired doctor in a lab coat dropped the corpse in his arms and answered. No. I do not study necromancy. I have no magical capabilities whatsoever. My skills lie in the study of skin and the various maladies related to it. You're a dermatologist? Slink asked, not looking up from his notes. Why, no. I'm not a dermatologist. I mean, I study how a person's skin reacts to various chemicals and reagents. Yeah. We need a doctor, not a dermatologist. Vlad said, ignoring Dr. Clock. Thank you for your time. I said I am not a dermatologist. My work is more highly specialized than that. Please, you have to see. Leave. Shaggy growled. Dr. Clock jumped slightly before quickly collecting himself and rushing toward the door. Petra sighed before she called. Don't forget your corpse. The good doctor rushed back into the room and grabbed the dead hamster alien. Dr. Clock gave them all a dirty look before he rushed back out of the room. They all waited for the door to slam shut again, and then they had to wait for the shocked gasps to die down before they go back to it. Shaggy rubbed his eyes before he pointed to the next guy seated in one of the chairs. He had said he was here as a doctor candidate. So, what about you? What you got? Shaggy, could you please be a little more professional? No, Vlad. Professional stopped an hour ago. Now we need to cut the fat, Shaggy said before barking at the pale doctor again. You. Kid. Power. Go. The pale alien jumped in his seat as Shaggy growled at him. I'm a hemomancer. I can control blood. Shaggy and the other sat up straighter. Slink's hand worked rapidly across his paper as he asked. Can you create blood? Not yet? But I think I'll be able to, maybe. So you're a mutant, not a magic-based doctor? Shaggy asked. Yes, sir. Fine. I'm good with him. All in favor? It shouldn't be this fast, Shaggy. We need to vet. Yes. I mean yes, sir. In favor. Shaggy said again. Petra and Slink both had their hands raised, but Vlad was glaring at him. Eventually, the pale vampire simply nodded and Shaggy grinned. Turning back to the kid, Shaggy glanced at Vlad's notes to find the new doctor's name. Okay. Dr. Kula. You are going to start as a nurse, and once we have the entire team in place, you'll join them. Is all that clear? Yes, sir. Good. Come back the day after tomorrow. Now on to you, Shaggy said, completely ignoring their newly minted doctor and staring at the young woman in the last chair. She shrunk in on herself as Shaggy barked at her. Power. I wasn't, she stuttered. Out with it. I thought this was a soup line. The woman cried, tears appearing in her eyes. Shaggy sighed as he pointed out the door. Nope. Food's at the bar. Get out. Dr. Kula, we will see you in a few days. Kula and the trembling woman hurried from the room as Shaggy nodded to himself. He glanced down the table as the door slammed shut again. Vlad was giving him an incredulous look. But Shaggy ignored him and checked on Slink and Petra. The female NPC looked tired but ready to continue. Slink was still rapidly writing things down. When the boy was finished, he craned his neck back up and gave Shaggy a nod. Okay, ready when you are. Everyone else? Shaggy asked. You're a pain in my ass, Vlad grumbled as Petra nodded. Not what I asked, but we are going anyway, Shaggy chuckled to himself. Tinsel. Send in the next group of 4. The sound of the infirmary door opening filled the air as 4 people walked in. The door shut behind the last man, leaving the new people to stare at them questioningly. Shaggy growled in his throat as he shouted. Front and center. Give us your name and the position you're applying for. Double time. Move it. The 4 NPCs jumped, all confused, before they rushed over to the table and rattled off their names. Leah Times, Magi Medic student, a doctor? Next. Shaggy said as Slink's pen went to work. Rollo Leitner, mechanic. Applying for the workshop. The second man said coolly. Great. Love the energy. Next. Almeida Lovelace, assassin. Looking to join your gang. The third man said. Not what the line was for. Shaggy sighed. So you're not recruiting assassins? Almeida asked. Nope. Shaggy said, taking in Almeida's clothes. The man was tall, almost 7 feet. Dressed in a long black cloak that covered his body with an obvious sword on his hip. Shaggy had to check if the guy was a player. But switching on his HUD revealed that only 3 people in the room had names over their heads. Shaggy turned his HUD back off and stared at Almeida. The man's dark eyes stared at him over a black half mask that went down to his chin. Shaggy sighed and turned to the others on his side of the table. When he did, Almeida moved. The tall assassin drew his sword in one quick motion and swiped it across the table. Vlad, sitting on the end, simply moved out of the way. But Shaggy was next in line and he just took the blade to his shoulder. The sword cut deep into Shaggy flesh and then stopped as it hit bone. Shaggy was surprised the blade made it that far. But he ignored the pain and yanked the blade out of Almeida's hands. The assassin tapped something on the blade's hilt, and Shaggy felt his muscles spasm uncontrollably for a few seconds. In that brief span of time, Almeida dove for his sword again. But Slink finally got to his feet and thrust his right arm out. Mo appeared from a hole in Slink's arm and collided with the onrushing Almeida. The large orange snake wrapped the assassin's head up and they both fell to the floor. Shaggy's muscles finally stopped twitching, and he threw himself over the table and stomped on Almeida's chest. A loud crack reverberated through the infirmary and Almeida went still. Slink called Mo back, and Vlad appeared at Shaggy's shoulder. "Where were you on that one?" "Speedster?" Shaggy groused. "You had it handled." Vlad smirked. "You're petty." "That's petty." Vlad didn't deny it and instead glanced down at the unmoving Almeida. He quickly checked the man's pockets, but came up empty. He turned to Shaggy to say something, when Almeida sat bolt upright. "Ha ha ha. Yes. That's what I am looking for." Almeida cheered, trying to get to his feet. But Shaggy and Vlad each gripped a shoulder and forced the crazed assassin to stay seated. Almeida looked confused until he spotted their angry faces. Shaggy was about to grow his claws when Almeida raised both his hands in surrender. He was still chuckling as he explained. "I am sorry. But I had to be sure who I was going to be working for. You realize I can't hire an assassin who tried to kill me, right?" "That would go against all good sense," Shaggy growled. Almeida cackled. "Yeah, but who needs good sense? Besides, I'm not an assassin. If I had wanted to kill you, I would have dropped a package off with enough explosive to remove this entire building from the face of Undertown," Almeida said slowly, raising. Shaggy and Vlad back up and let the tall man get to his feet. Once he had dusted himself off, Almeida took his mask off. Underneath was the mangled remains of a lower jaw. But the man still spoke as if nothing was wrong. Almeida bowed slowly as he introduced himself again. "I am Almeida Lovelace, mechanical virtuoso extraordinaire and willing cohort to your group." "Great. Another mad scientist." Slink grumbled. "My boy, I assure you I am the sanest man you will ever meet. You just attacked the people you want a job from. Doesn't sound very sane." Almeida grimaced at them all. "Why? I have to be sure you lot can protect me, don't I? Besides, what's a little assassination attempt between new friends?" "What are your qualifications?" Vlad asked. Shaggy rubbed his forehead in consternation but didn't interrupt. Almeida threw open his black cloak and revealed his clothes underneath. The man was in surprisingly mundane clothes except for a large multi-layered armored plate he wore on his chest. The armor was cracked and a green liquid was spilled down over the man's jeans. But Almeida ignored it as he pointed out the armor and sword. "I give you the Almeida multi-layered dermic armor and stun sword. Capable of withstanding multiple pounds of force and slicing through even the toughest armors." "He did slice through my plates and survive me punching him full force," Shaggy admitted angrily. "Another reason for my deception," Almeida said, clearly latching on to an excuse. Shaggy and Vlad shared a look before Shaggy asked a question. "So what? You want to work in our workshop?" Almeida nodded. "Of course. That's why I was in line, you know, and not because I thought it was a soup line or anything like that." Shaggy narrowed his eyes, but let the matter drop. Slink was back to writing things down, and Vlad was already apologizing to the other applicants. Petra gave him a look that said she wanted the madman out of her bar. "Look. Why don't you come back in a few days? We'll see how you get on with some of the other people that are going to be in the workshop." The room went silent. Shaggy heard Slink's pen stop its scratching and Petra's already annoyed glance went frigid. Vlad excused himself from his conversation and spun on his heel. Shaggy met the vampire's eyes and grinned past the mad scientist. "You can't be serious," Vlad muttered. "What? I like him. Plus, he is the sanest scientist we have seen in the past 2 hours." Slink sighed from the table before addressing Almeida. "What salary were you thinking?" Almeida looked affronted as he wrapped his cloak around his body. Why? I would never accept payment for advancing the sciences. All I need is a workshop and the materials to keep myself busy. That's a vote from me too, then. I would like to request that you build the workshop further away from my bar then. Vlad hissed as he turned to point a finger at Almeida, still addressing Shaggy. This nutcase just attacked you. So did Chromia. We don't even know what his specialties are. I have an imaginary familiarity with several science disciplines. Imaginary? Yes. I imagine something and then I make it. It really is all highly scientological. Slink sighed as began writing again. Yeah, that's not a word. Although that power sounds interesting. Any other issues, Vlad? The pale vampire mutant gripped his nose in frustration and took several calming breaths before throwing up his hands. He went over to Lightner and Times, which reminded Shaggy of the fourth applicant in the room. The young man was looking at all of them like they were all insane. Shaggy grinned, showing off his enlarged canines. The poor kid started rapidly backing toward the door before breaking into a full-on run, slamming the door behind him. Shaggy sighed but nodded understandingly. Not everyone is built for this kind of environment. Leah. Rollo. How about you two? You in? And how much do you want? Leah and Rollo broke away from Vlad to answer. Leah was the first to speak, pointedly not looking at Almeida. I want 3,000 credits a month and the capability preform any experiments I want on willing volunteers. Shaggy blinked at the casual way the woman mentioned human experimentation. But he figured that whoever was joining a criminal organization was going to have a few eccentricities. She kept eye contact with Slink for a few seconds before she moved her gaze to Shaggy and then Vlad. The three of them looked at each other. Shaggy shrugged, Vlad sighed, and Slink answered. 2,500 a month and you'll take a penalty for every volunteer you kill. Acceptable? Leah grimaced, but nodded her head. Fine. Where will I be working? Facilities are being designed. Come back in 2 days to meet your coworkers. Shaggy said, brushing over the fact that they weren't designing anything. The room then turned to Rollo, who was studying Almeida cautiously. The tall mad scientist was digging through his large cloak, pulling out absurdly large items. Shaggy quirked an eyebrow, but quickly returned his questioning gaze back to Rollo. The mechanic sighed. Will his area be sectioned off? He asked, waving at Almeida. Vlad nodded slowly. That's a good idea. Sectioned off and heavily reinforced. Everyone in the room nodded as Almeida yanked what looked like an electrified slinky from his pants. Shaggy bit back a smile as Slink wrote more things done. Rollo sighed but nodded. That's fine then. I'll take the going rate you're giving people. I can keep what I make in my off time. Shaggy wanted to say no. But Slink spoke up before him. Yes. However, anything you create in the workshop that has a commercial value that you then sell, the Legion gets a cut. Rollo grimaced. How much? 20% of each sale of the item. But we will also help you with mass production, if you want to go that route. You have the facilities for that? Not at the moment. But we are expanding. Slink smiled. Rollo thought about it for a few seconds before finally he nodded. Slink drew up rough contracts for the 3 new applicants and they all signed. Afterward they were hurried out the door and Shaggy and his fellow interviewers all sighed. Shaggy took his seat as Vlad joined him, still complaining. That madman is going to cost us a fortune in damages. Yeah. But think about what he can create. Literally anything he can imagine, he can build. How do you not see the value in that? Shaggy asked. Oh, I see it. But I also see all the headaches having someone so erratic in the Legion will cause. You can oversee the workshop, Shaggy. I'll take the infirmary. Which apparently I have to design and plan out in 2 days? Shaggy chuckled as he slapped his friend's shoulder. We need to expand, anyway. You've seen the line outside. How much of that is money just walking away? We need to build out and up. I agree with the out. But let's not go too high up. Slink interjected. There is still the odd drunk flyer or cog robot floating around down here. Last thing we need is someone to crash into our damn building. Yes. Please. We already spend enough replacing chairs and tables. I don't want to think about the expense of repairing walls. Petra complained. Shaggy and Vlad nodded slowly. The poor woman seemed completely drained after so many interviews, and they still had more to go. Shaggy only had around an hour or so left of game time. So he really wanted to get to the next group of applicants. But first he had a question. How many are we at? Leah makes 5 for the infirmary, and Almeida and Raulo are the only ones in the workshop. Great. So all we need are workshop people, right? Is 5 enough for the infirmary? Vlad asked. Can we afford more? Shaggy countered. Both of them turned to Slink, who was busy chewing on the end of his pen. When he felt Shaggy and Vlad's gazes, he looked up. We are good, so far. But I think Shaggy is right about the infirmary. We got what we need. If we have to hire more, we can pawn it off on Leah or Kula. There were some loud groans and complaints. But mostly people left the line and head back out the door. A few tried to get Shaggy's attention. But he ignored them and spoke to Tinsel, who was still manning the door. Give them a few to clear up and then send the rest in. Tinsel gave him a quick nod and Shaggy ducked back into the room. Vlad was standing at the table, looking annoyed. Petra had her head down and Slink was back to writing his novel or whatever he was doing. Shaggy ignored Vlad's glare and returned to his seat, whistling happily. They all sat in silence for a few minutes. Slink's pen was the only noise until eventually that stopped and the boy perked up his head. Are we really going to be killing the interns? Depends how stupid they are. But really, I figure we'll have to fire a few. There are going to be some growing pains in this endeavor. Slink nodded and sat back in his chair. It was another couple of minutes before the door to the infirmary creaked open again and more people were let in. However, the next hour passed with little incident. Shaggy was surprised to not see another mad scientist in the bunch that appeared. There were a few interesting mutant with metallurgical powers, but nothing mad about any of them. Thankfully, Shaggy maintained his speed interview style, which upset a few, but resulted in them finishing fairly quickly. They got another 3 workshop employees fairly quickly, and Slink even wrote a few for future consideration. Petra had fallen asleep after 30 minutes. But with Shaggy leading the interviews, they hardly needed her. Shaggy was considering giving the woman a vacation when the infirmary door slammed open again. Shaggy almost summoned his claws. But when he realized it was Levy, he relaxed. Levy stomped into the room, looked annoyed, before she spotted him. She said nothing as she raised her wrist and sarcastically tapped her finger against it. Shaggy sighed and turned to his 2 compatriots at the table. Looks like I can't play anymore, guys. I gotta wake up and do adult stuff now. Gross. Don't need to hear about it. Not that kind of adult stuff, you bastards. I gotta log off. Slink, you got everything handled? Yeah, I got it, Shaggy. I'll set some stuff up for the Legion and then log myself. I'm late for school already. Vlad sighed and rubbed a hand down his face. I guess I'll get out of here too. See you all tonight then. Shaggy smiled and as he rushed over to Levy and hugged her. Back to the real world, then. Levy sighed. Always sucks. But we can cause some mayhem when we get back, right? Shaggy grinned. Oh, more than you know, dear. Levy's smile became predatory. My mistress has apparently found out where Cog is. She's calling all of her acolytes back for a ritual. Shaggy felt his eyes grow wide as he suddenly remembered what they knew about Cog. He was about to ask more when the motes of light obscured his vision and he disappeared from the game world. As soon as Shaggy's feet hit the floor, he knew something was wrong. He was materializing back in the bar's infirmary. But instead of the normal wooden floor, he stepped out onto something much softer. Levy bumped into him as she lost her footing on the not-so-solid ground. Shaggy took a moment to steady them both before he looked around. The infirmary and the entire back wall of the bar were gone. It was cut clean in two, like some giant knife had sliced the back end of the Viper's den right off. Shaggy would have been more alarmed if it wasn't for the multiple lackeys moving around carrying bits of wood and other building materials. They must have been in the process of expanding the bar. "What the hell is all this?" Levy asked after she straightened up. "Building expansion. Slink must have set the lackeys to building before he left." Shaggy grabbed his wife's hand and led her back toward the still standing portion of the bar. They had to step up a bit to get onto the wooden floor. But when they did, Shaggy was surprised to see the front half of the building was still busy. People moved about between tables, drinking beer and chatting. Shaggy shook his head and snorted at the absurdity. Levy squeezed his hand, bringing his gaze back to her. "I'll get going like we planned." "I'll meet you on the other side?" Shaggy nodded. "Yeah, don't leave without me." "Maybe." Levy chuckled as she rushed off in the direction the stairs used to be. Shaggy chuckled good-naturedly and set out toward the bar. He could see Petra's sparkling green scales shifting in the unnatural light of Undertown. The entire back wall being gone really let in a lot more light. Shaggy curved around several servers and other staff before he planted himself next to the bar. It took a few seconds to get the woman's attention, but when he had it, he waved her down. "What can I get you, boss? More workers to rip up my bar or dig up my foundations?" Shaggy gave the obviously irate woman a toothy grin. "Sorry, Petra. But we needed to expand." Slink apparently thought it was a good idea to do that now. "So it's being done. Once everything's in place, it'll all come together." Petra just snorted, but didn't disagree. So Shaggy continued. "Speaking of the boy, have you seen him? Or any of the leadership? I need to speak to them." Shaggy nodded as he pushed away from the bar. "Thanks, Petra. Keep being you. You'll get through this nonsense." The scaly woman just waved him off and went back to her work. Shaggy hurried back outside and scanned the various people moving around. A lot of Undertown citizens were just standing around, watching. But he found a pack of people dressed in black huddled around at the far south end. It took some pushing, but eventually Shaggy made it into the mass of people. Vlad was at its center, having a conversation with Leah and the other doctors and nurses they had hired. They were all looking down at a large blueprint on a wooden table. Shaggy tried to wave to get Vlad's attention. But the vampire was engrossed in his own conversation. Shaggy had to shoulder his way past the vampire's normal cadre of sycophants before he could tap his friend's shoulder. When he did, all hell broke loose. "He has touched the master. Slay the defiler. Murder him. Protect the master. Cease this. You damn children are really getting on my nerves. Go help the others build or something. But master. Go." Vlad's angry shout echoed through his cadre of dark-coated lackeys, and they scattered. Shaggy sighed and stood firm as a few of the jackass vampires tried to knock his shoulder. Shaggy responded by sending several of them to the dirt with his own shoulder shove. He heard Vlad sighed at his antics, but he would not let a bunch of NPCs punk him. As the last of the sycophants bleed away into the background, Shaggy finally got a look at the infirmary blueprints. Other than a general widening of the building, though, Shaggy didn't really look too deeply at what they were doing. "We need to have a meeting. All hands, or as many as we got," Shaggy said vaguely. One of Vlad's slim black eyebrow rose. "Pertaining to what, exactly?" "I am awfully busy here, you know. The cog raid might be starting up." Vlad's back went straight, and he studied Shaggy's face. "Did your wife talk to Corgan?" "Nope. I never got around to telling her about Cog's pocket dimension or whatever it was. Corrigan contacted her people. Something about retribution on the betrayer or something. I think the system is gearing up for a big raid. But only for people that have an in with the Mad Witch. Which, thanks to your wife, we have. So what is the meeting going to be about? Who goes with Levy to the Mad Witch's realm and finds out what's going on? Vlad snorted and glanced back down at the paperwork. Oh, that's easy. You do it. You don't need the rest of us. I doubt Corrigan is going to start the raid immediately or anything. You go, find out what's going on and when, then we plan around it. Shaggy crossed his arms and scowled. You sure about that? For all we know, the witch is going to charge straight at the old man. You could miss out. I doubt it. Just go. I'll take the heat if me and the guys end up missing anything. We have way too much stuff around here to organize. It feels like we are constantly renovating shit down here. Thankfully, we are still getting recruits daily. Shaggy shrugged his shoulder and walked away. Fine. If that's what you want. But let it be known I offered, and you spoke for everyone. Noted. Vlad said, sounding bored as he went back to his blueprints with the infirmary staff. Shaggy guessed that Slink was using the excess dirt to reinforce the walls or do something else related to the renovations. Despite what Vlad said, Shaggy stuck his head into the war room, looking for Slink. The pale teen was frantically typing into the war table's interface, trying hard to keep up with the building. Shaggy gave the boy the same spiel he gave Vlad, but surprisingly, the kid agreed with the vampire. Look, while I don't doubt you are a trouble magnet, I don't think Corrigan has the resources to attack Cog right now. She is probably gathering her people for a declaration of war or something. Yeah, but you don't want to be there for that? It could be epic. Yeah, I'm sure it will be, but we have to take care of the base, too. We actually have some downtime here. The Quinnica are gone or lying low, the UGB is content with harassing our traders, and the racks are focused upward. We have space to push. So we need to push. Although. Slink trailed off as he finally looked up at Shaggy. Shaggy smiled widely, thinking the kid was going to join him and Levy. But instead, the kid's eyes unfocused, like he was trying to remember something. When it came to him, his eyes dropped back to what he was typing. Although? Shaggy prompted. Take Dave with you. He's great with manual labor, but he has been wandering around like a lost puppy. I think he needs to go back out and stretch his legs. Let him run with the magical crowd for a while. Shaggy snorted. You know he's not actually a dog, right? I know we kid around. Slink stifled a laugh. I know, but the guy's energy is infectious. He can bring an entire room full of lazy lackeys to life. I was mentally weighing the pros and cons of you taking him. But I think an outing will be just what the guy needs. Fine. I'll take the Dave for a walk in a witch's pocket realm. You sure he won't be missed? Slink shrugged. Morale will flag a bit, but we'll manage. Go find out what this is all about and report back. Sure thing, boss. Shaggy chuckled as he rushed away. He had to zigzag his way past people in the overcrowded hallways. It didn't take him long to find Dave. The guy was happily digging through a wall of dirt as he talked to nearby lackeys. He was in his full blue armor, rapidly pushing armfuls of dirt out of his way. Lackeys with snow shovels collected the dirt and shoved it aside before it vanished in blue light. Shaggy whistled loudly, getting Dave's attention. Hey, Dave. You want to go for a walk in a magical world designed by an evil witch? The half-dozen lackeys in the hallway all stared at Shaggy in confusion. But he ignored them as Dave did a fist pump and leapt into the air. Dave's helmeted head collided with the ceiling, but he ignored it as dirt and wood fell on him. Right now. Portal room. We gotta meet my wife, and then we're going over. Sweet. Later, dudes. Dave hurried over to Shaggy, and they both made their way toward the portal room. Shaggy did his best to ignore the forlorn looks a good deal of the lackeys were giving Dave. The mutant player dropped his armor and grinned as they entered the portal room. Shaggy shook his head at the man's cheer and turned to study the portal. The pink-rimmed swirling mass of magic was still floating in the middle of the room. But Shaggy was surprised to see multiple groups of people passing in and out of the vortex. He was unaware that their people were using the damn thing so regularly. But then he supposed that was the point. Shaggy and Dave shoved their way to the front of the moving line of lackeys and tossed themselves through. Shaggy could hear Dave apologizing behind him as the feeling of vertigo took him. But the feeling quickly went away as his feet hit dirt again. Shaggy moved out of the way as Dave came careening through the portal. Once they both had their feet back under them, Shaggy went looking for his wife. According to the plans they made in the real world, she would wait behind their cabin, which Shaggy was surprised to find was still only half built. The area around the log cabin was being worked, though. Tree had been cleared or moved and lackeys were working to build other small shacks and houses. Shaggy spotted several mages standing near a large crop of trees, hands glowing with magic. The young trees around them glowed and increased in size. Shaggy had to grip Dave's shirt before the guy ran off to interrogate the mages. Of course, the lackeys moving everywhere probably helped distract the excitable player. Large crates of who knows what were being moved around the space. Shaggy saw several big square buildings on the northern side of the cave. But he didn't stop to examine what was going on. Levy had everything handled on this side of the portal. So Shaggy dragged Dave around the cabin and toward the large pit in the back. Levy was already standing there patiently waiting with a few other mages. Shaggy gave a wave and a call as he finally let go of Dave's shirt. "Hey. We all heading out then?" Levy gave him a smile and a quick hug while nodding. "Yep. We're just waiting for the call. Corrigan is going to pull us along. All you have to do is hang on." Shaggy gripped his wife's hand and smiled. Until Dave placed a hand on his shoulder. Shaggy turned to see Dave smiling excitedly at him. "Dude, this is going to be so cool. Why are you grabbing me? Go find a mage to latch onto," Shaggy said, trying to shrug off Dave's hand. Levy giggled. "Actually, he should be fine. As long as you are in contact with me, it should drag him along as well." "Should?" Shaggy asked, sounding skeptical. Levy shrugged. "Corrigan is a powerful witch. For all I know, everyone near her excepted minions will be pulled toward her realm. So expect to be questioned by her guard. She is usually very strict about who she lets into her realm. Which tells you how worried she is about Cog," said one of Levy's mage friends. The robed woman nearly vibrated as she clasped her hands together and spoke about her mistress. "She will rain down destruction upon that old bastard. It will be glorious." Shaggy gave his wife a worried look, but she merely smiled at him and placed a finger to her lips. He nodded, but kept an eye on the obvious sycophant. The absolute reverence from the NPC made Shaggy nervous. But then again, Corrigan was apparently a big name in the game. Shaggy was about to ask his wife about the types of questions Corrigan's people would ask him. But before he could, a twisting yank sensation came from his gut. Shaggy felt like a fish on a line being dragged upward by his hand. He was sure both Dave and Levy were still with him. His hand and shoulder felt like they were glued to their respective hands. His vision was blurry. He could make out nothing but a tunnel filled with color. Images of purple, pink, and red blew past him until his feet collided with solid ground again. But he didn't have time to enjoy his feeling of stability, because a screeching warbling went up around him. Shaggy barely had enough time to take in his surroundings before several dark shapes pushed toward him. He let go of Levy's hand and shifted his own into claws. Blinking rapidly, Shaggy heard shouts of alarm and cries for help all around him. When he got his vision back, a black and purple demon was standing in front of him. The horned demon man was over 8 feet tall and wearing a pair of torn shorts and nothing else. His 2 goat-like legs pawed at the earth as he studied Shaggy. Shaggy was ready for a fight, but suddenly Levy was between them and shouting up at the tall demon. "They are with me." He's my husband and the other one is our friend. They've come to hear what the lady has to say. Shaggy glanced around, noticing Dave, fully armored up just behind him. The player was happily jumping while looking around. Shaggy returned his look to his wife in time to see the demon's all-too-human face scowl down at Levy. Shaggy wanted to dig his claws into the bastard just for the look, but he contained himself. Eventually, the black and purple-skinned demon snorted and spoke. All newcomers must be processed. Stand aside as we deal with the other extras. Shaggy wanted to ask questions, but Levy gripped his hand and dragged him away. Dave following behind them, still jumping, trying to get a look at everything. They pushed forward, moving with a large crowd of people. As Shaggy looked down, he realized they were all standing on a stone slab with archaic writing written on it. The writing was lit up with a purple glow which cast everyone in its creepy color. Screams of terror and the sounds of fighting came from all around Shaggy. But with the crowd, he couldn't make out much. The smells of fire and blood were in the air, and judging by the occasional scream that was suddenly silenced, Shaggy figured he knew how they were dealing with the extras. Dave was still hopping though, armor still up. Dude, they are, like, killing a bunch of people. Not cleanly or quickly, either. It's like they are trying to prolong the suffering. Yeah, Levy said as she continued to pull Shaggy further away from the stone slab. Corrigan's minions are paid with the suffering of her enemies, so they like to play with their food. Gnarly. Shaggy kept up with his wife as they finally leapt off the stone slab and onto a field of scorched dirt. He finally got a better look at the landscape as people spread out and made room. The sky was a deep mauve color with no clouds or sun. It seemed like the sky itself glowed with an otherworldly power. The landscape was a desolate wasteland of black scorched dirt and sand with gray dead trees everywhere. Off in the distance, a large black castle stood out on a hillside overlooking a city of stone and metal. Shaggy tried to get a sense of how big the city was, but before he could, he was roughly spun around. He saw Dave being held by two large demons as a third held a clipboard. The excitable player wasn't struggling, so Shaggy didn't either, as his own demon glared down at him. Levy was a short distance away, giving Shaggy a behave look, so he bit off any retort and tried to be civil. Name? The tall demon rumbled. Shaggy. No. Your real name. Shaggy. Right. The demon seemed to roll his fiery red eyes and moved on. Reason for visit? I came to see the sights. Shaggy thought, taking a second to cut off his own snark. To hear the Mad Witch Corrigan's message. Mad Witch? The demon roared. Next to him, Shaggy saw his wife slap her own forehead. Shaggy rapidly tried to play it off as the demon's hands lit on fire. Yeah. That's what they call her outside. What would be the proper epitaph here? The demon took a few seconds to calmly breath, in which time, blue flames peeked out from its nostrils. Once the demon was calm enough, it glared down at Shaggy. The proper way to address Our Lady is Mistress, Lady, or the Grand Witch. You are allowed 2 mistakes while in the Mistress realm. That was 1. Shaggy bit back his anger and mentally counted down from 10. Levy, tapping a few feet away, helped him keep a level head as the demon asked more inane questions. If he had any magical affiliation, how he felt about the different dimensions, what flavor ice cream he liked. Shaggy wanted to reach up and slap the demon by the end of all the questions. But he could hear Dave's demons asking the same questions. So he let it all go and focused on the world around him as he was interrogated. But unfortunately, this realm was entirely devoid of most anything. Shaggy thought he saw more buildings off in the far distance. But aside from the city behind him, Corrigan's realm seemed absolutely empty. Which Shaggy guessed was the point of a personal pocket dimension. It was clearly a place Corrigan built for her own people. So all she needed was a city and her own castle. The demon's bored voice brought Shaggy back from his musings. Finally, are you now, or have you ever been a champion of any deity/religion/cult/sect/alien order? Shaggy almost said no automatically. but the sudden taste of blood in his mouth stopped him. He had to choke down the blood taste and cough a few times before he eventually nodded. The demons seemed surprised and waited for Shaggy to elaborate. Levy took a few steps closer while Shaggy eventually collected himself. I have been blessed by the blood god, Zang," Shaggy said, silently cursing the god in the back of his mind. The purple and black demon took a step back as he stared at Shaggy in awe. The demons that had been questioning Dave also stopped what they were doing and turned to look. Shaggy scratched the back of his head and wondered what trouble this would cause. He didn't have to wait long as a black bolt of energy clashed in the mauve sky above. The demons and several mages scattered as a large black tube of magic shot down from the sky and crackled with purple lightning. The tube of magic shimmered and slowly dissipated before Shaggy's eyes, and a tall woman stepped forth. Levy rushed to Shaggy's side and gripped his arm as the tall woman stalked forward. Her black dress dragging in the dirt. Purple magic sparked off the woman's pale skin and her green eyes pierced Shaggy's brain, and he felt his mental defenses try to resist. The woman smiled at the meager defense and raised a hand. A gnarled black staff appeared in her hands and Shaggy's world went dark. Images and memories flashed through his mind, but Shaggy could hold on to nothing. As quick as the darkness had come, it receded and Shaggy found himself almost nose to nose with the Mad Witch. Her long black hair covered half her face, but Shaggy thought he could see a smile forming. "My lady," Levy said, but the pale woman raised a hand and everything went silent. "Now this is interesting," Corrigan said as she pulled away from Shaggy and Levy and stood to her full height. The Mad Witch suddenly threw her head back and cackled. The air around Shaggy seemed to freeze and the very world seemed to reverberate as its master laughed. Shaggy shared a look with his wife and wondered what the hell he had just done. The Mad Witch's cackling echoed through Shaggy's ears. He felt Levy's hand tighten on his arm and he tried to back away. But some force held him in place while Corrigan gleefully laughed into the sky. Shaggy tried to break whatever was holding him, but with a sudden flash of purple and a whoosh of air distracted him. He and Levy had to catch themselves, as they were suddenly somewhere else. Corrigan's laughter was tapering off as Shaggy took in his surroundings. They were in a large throne room. Stone gargoyles and large candles dotted the walls. The candles sparked to life with an eerie purple flame as the Mad Witch moved around Shaggy and Levy. They were on a long red carpet that crossed the room from the doors to the stairs leading up to the throne. Large circular floor-to-ceiling columns bracketed the carpet. Corrigan climbed the large dais leading to her single dark throne and threw herself into it. She was still wiping her eyes from laughing so hard. Shaggy slowly grew his claws and got himself ready for anything. But Levy put a cautionary hand on his shoulder. Shaggy could feel his wife's tension. They were nowhere near ready for a threat like Corrigan. But Shaggy wasn't about to let himself die without a fight. "Oh, relax," Corrigan said, still grinning. "If I had wanted you dead, I would have ripped your skeleton from your body." Shaggy kept his claws out. He wasn't sure if the witch could do that. He growled low in his throat, ready to demand to know why they were brought to her throne room. A sharp smack to the back of his head brought him around to look at Levy. His wife was wringing out her hand and glaring at him, clearly understanding how rude he was about to be. She gently shoved him backward as she addressed the witch. "My lady, is there something you need from us?" Corrigan stared at them, a look of mirth still on her face. "Oh indeed, my loyal subject. It appears your companion has a link with someone I would very much like to know." Shaggy shared a look with Levy. He was certain this had to do with Zang and Cog. Although he figured Corrigan already knew about Zang. If not from her own dealing, then at least with whatever memories she yanked from him. Keeping his claws out, Shaggy took a verbal stab at what the Mad Witch wanted. "We did no such thing." The Mad Witch leapt from her throne angrily, stomping a foot. The gesture would have been cute if all the gargoyles on the walls hadn't turned to glare at Shaggy. Shaggy crouched low and got ready for a boss fight. But his wife slapped his shoulder again and hissed at him. Shaggy rubbed his shoulder and returned his eyes to the Mad Witch, who was pacing on her dais. The blasted fool wasn't supposed to live. What kind of god allows a mortal to sit on his throne? Was Zane not paying attention? Shaggy scoffed as he asked. What exactly was supposed to happen? 'Cause all I saw was Cog on a throne of bones, place a crown on his head, and everything went to shit. Suddenly Corrigan was in Shaggy's face. His arms tethered to the floor in purple chains and Levy was frozen with her hand in the air. Purple energy slowly trying to coalesce on her fingers. Corrigan regarded Levy for a few seconds before she glared down at Shaggy. The crown. Does he still have it? Shaggy grunted and pulled ineffectually on his chains before he answered. I don't know. Like I said, shit went to hell. Whatever he did pissed off or woke up Zang. He had enough time to piss me off, piss Zang off, and then he ghosted. Corrigan snorted and released Shaggy from his bonds. Levy snapped back into motion. Purple magic whirling around her hand. The Mad Witch raised an eyebrow at Levy. Were you going to attack me, servant? Levy looked annoyed, whether at being called a servant or so outclassed magically. Shaggy couldn't tell. Instead of answering, she simply moved to Shaggy's side. He's my husband, mistress. Seems like a stupid reason to piss off your queen. But I shall forgive you. Mostly because your husband is the blood god's champion. I wouldn't go that far, really. Mostly, he just gave me a mission and some benefits. Corrigan walked around Shaggy and Levy as she chuckled. Oh? And what was this mission? Retrieve the crown, was it? Slaughter Cog? Send the sexist bastard off to meet the great blood god himself. 2 and 3, mostly. Still not sure about this crown nonsense. Shaggy answered. So Zang wants his revenge, does he? Interesting. Was there any mention of me in that little deal of yours? No orders to burn the witch that opened the door for Cog? Maybe exsanguinate the filthy harlot? Shaggy scratched the back of his head with a claw. Yeah, not so much. If I had to guess, Zang was unaware of your involvement. Was? Corrigan grinned. Shaggy nodded. Yeah. He's been pushing up against my brain since I got here and said his name. So I just assumed he was listening. Corrigan stopped pacing and summoned her staff to her hand again. The blood god can see into my realm? She started to cast some kind of spell. Purple magic swirled around the hall, the glowing candles winked out, and the gargoyles took flight and circled the ceiling. The Mad Witch's eyes glowed with power and she intoned a spell. That's when Shaggy was forcibly removed from his body. It was like he had become a ghost in an old game. He was watching his body from the outside as he drifted just over Corrigan. Shaggy was about to curse the damn witch out, but then he same his in-game body move. His avatar shook off Levy's hand and grew as Corrigan continued her chanting. His body grew large and hairy. Shaggy was sure he was becoming a wolf. But, instead, his body remained upright and grew to be 12 foot tall and almost grotesquely muscular. He was still a wolf, but it was the man-wolf form. His face and upper chest were hairy and wolf-like, but his legs were closer to human. Except for the clawed feet he had when he did a partial transformation. Also, for some reason, his normally black coat was now dyed red. But his blue eyes still shone brightly from his wolf-like face. Corrigan was still muttering her spell. But Shaggy's body merely waved a hand and all the magic in the room vanished. Shaggy floated, stunned, as he watched his body crouch low to get face to face with the Mad Witch. You seek to block me, witch. What secrets do you hide? Shaggy watched Corrigan take a few steps back as his body's unfamiliar voice boomed out through the hall. It was grating and rough and seemed stuck on yell mode. Even Shaggy tried to float away a few steps, but he was almost locked in place. Levy was pushing away from the center of the carpet, looking confused. Corrigan straightened up and planted her staff on the carpet. Zang. You have no power in my realm. Leave this place or your champion is forfeit. You do not dictate terms to me, witch. You and your compatriot conspired to steal from me. This violates the old accords. The old rules no longer apply. Shall we call a conclave to see what the Elder Court thinks? Corrigan's face looked like she had eaten a lemon whole. There is no cause for that. Cog was merely meant to negotiate with you. Youth and power for him and your crown for me. That was our deal. He broke it. You seek my crown, witch? You truly are as foolish as the old ones claim. I only meant to borrow the crown. Even I am not crazy enough to hold on to a relic like that. The cost would be incalculable. The cost shall be laid at your feet if old fool is not stopped. He plays with my crown even as we speak, using it to grant power to his foul creations of metal and wires. Everything in the room went quiet as the Mad Witch herself seemed to curl up in fear. She shuddered and glanced around the room. Shaggy saw actual fear on the NPC's face as she practically retreated to her throne. Zhang, in Shaggy's body, let her sit down on her throne. The god in human wolf form just glared at the witch. Blue eyes glowing. Corrigan sat on her throne and closed her eyes for a few seconds. When they snapped back open, she seemed to relax. We are safe. The crown is not in the mortal realm. Zhang was not as pleased. I know that, witch. He plays with it in a space beyond my reach. Another one of your pocket realms? He is no longer my ally. Why would I build him a pocket realm? No. I just discovered the deceiver recently. I was going to have my people declare war. We were even hosting a tournament to choose Cog's execution squad. Zhang snorted, and the entire castle seemed to shake. My champion must strike the killing blow. Cog will pay for his insolence in my realm. I will allow you 1 hour with it if you help my champion. One day. Corrigan demanded, and Shaggy saw Levy moving to the far end of the throne room. You do not bargain with me, witch. I will have my crown returned. You shall be granted 3 hours, and no more. I have spoken. With an air of finality, Shaggy's body began to shrink again. Ghost Shaggy felt himself being dragged back to his body as Zhang left his digital avatar. Levy was rushing back now that his man-wolf form was deflating. Shaggy felt his sense snap back to his head, and he had to reorient himself with the room. But a few seconds after his return, his entire body seized up, and he fell backward. Shaggy coughed, seeing specks of red fly into the air. It felt like his bones were melting as his body slammed into the ground. He heard Levy's voice as he writhed and groaned in pain. He rolled on the carpet of the Mad Witch's throne room for what felt like hours before his body calmed down. The pain drained from his body and his skin stopped burning. He felt his hunger spike through the roof as he lurched back to life on the throne room floor. Levy was hovering over him, looking worried. Her hands glowing with magic. He gave her his best smile, but she winced at whatever she saw. Shaggy felt liquid on his face and thought he had been crying. But when he raised a hand to wipe it off, he found himself covered in blood. From somewhere in the direction of the throne, Shaggy heard Corrigan scoff. So Zhang's champion is a resilient one, huh? Shaggy was happy his wife was more cognizant to ask questions. His everything was still very sore. Your husband's body just housed the essence of a literal god. His lycanthropy probably helped with some of the blowback. Even so, it is impressive that he survived at all. Essence? Shaggy choked out, trying to wipe the blood from his face. Yes. His essence, and probably only a small portion of it. Otherwise, your mind would have caved in and your heart would have exploded within your chest. It's not a pretty sight. Great. Shaggy coughed and tried to pull himself to his feet. But Levy slammed a foot onto his chest and kept him prone. Meanwhile, she addressed the Mad Witch. Corrigan, what will we be doing then? Shaggy could hear the annoyance in his wife's voice. But Corrigan's bitter response was almost as chilling. Corrigan? Am I no longer your mistress? That remains to be seen. Will you be honoring your deal with my husband's deity? I'm not really a discus Urk. Shaggy's words were cut off by his wife's foot kicking him. Corrigan's bored voice reached Shaggy's ears as he moved his wife's heel away. Yes. You and your husband shall be a part of the upcoming war. Levy hummed happily, but added a caveat. We have others. More people with a grudge against Cog. They wish to join in the war. Shaggy pulled himself to his feet, shaking off his wife's attempts to keep him down. As he stood, he saw the Mad Witch sitting with her legs over one side of her throne. She was the picture of boredom as she waved Levy's words away. Yeah, sure. All are welcome to slaughter that old fool's army and crush his pathetic realm into dust. I will make an announcement soon. Now leave me. I have a sudden headache and you do not know the pain I'm in. Shaggy stood on shaky legs and glanced down at his blood-covered body. He had to literally bite his own tongue before he went on a tirade. Levy seemed to cotton on to his mood and hurriedly helped him. Shaggy's regeneration was at 0 and his stomach was rumbling almost constantly. Overhead, several gargoyles watched them as they exited the throne room. Shaggy sighed loudly as he limped out of the throne room and started toward the far door. Levy by his side, helping. Eventually, his wife started to laugh silently. Shaggy glanced at her like she was crazy as they pushed their way through Corrigan's castle. Levy caught his eye a few times, but her laughter kept on growing as they walked. Soon Shaggy was joining her as they finally made it outside and stood under the mauve-colored sky. 2 demon guards observed them as they were both outright howling with laughter. Shaggy had to catch himself several times as they walked down the steps of the castle and got to the street below. Shaggy nodded as he wiped a tear from his face. My body housed an actual in-game god. Levy inhaled sharply as a sudden thought hit her. Oh, please tell me you were recording. Shit. I wasn't. I think I was locked in cutscene mode or something. Oh sure, and you couldn't access your menus? Hey, what's your excuse? My husband turned into a furry demon wolfman thing. Sorry if I got distracted. Unacceptable. I declare this time to be your fault. Your credits are forfeit. My credits? You want my money, honey? Shaggy glanced up at his wife pitifully. Yes, please feed me. My healing power is at 0. I need food to recharge. Housing a god is hard work. Pfft, looked like all you did was stand there and let someone else do all the work. You want to get paid for that? Yes, please. With food. In my face. Shaggy said as he ignored the stares he was getting. He was still covered in blood. Levy chuckled as she took his bloody hand. Fine. Food first, then we find your friend and we wait for Corrigan's message. I'll record that and send it out on the forums. Next, we'll have to have a player meeting. Shaggy nodded as his nose tilted into the air involuntarily. The smell of cooked meat hit him and his stomach growled loudly. Levy laughed again and let herself be dragged away. Shaggy briefly wondered what Dave had gotten up to when they were abducted. He hoped the gregarious guy didn't get himself in trouble. Of course, even Levy had wanted to know what the purple meat chunks had been. But Shaggy was too busy eating to pay attention. Now his wife was in the latest magic shop, searching through its shelves. After the first 3 shops, Shaggy stopped going inside. They all smelt of weird spices and book leather. A combination that put him off his mystery meat. Now he was standing on the dark orange cobblestones of the main road in Corrigan's kingdom. Shaggy was surprised that the place appeared to be more of a fantasy setting than a more modern one. Houses were brick and thatch, with only a few more modern-looking cement buildings dotted about. Sparse vegetation and trees were planted in the black dirt surrounding most buildings. Although Shaggy couldn't identify the flora and most of it looked dead. Shaggy tossed his skewer in a nearby garbage bin and watched as the wooden stick was disintegrated as it passed by the lid. Shaggy had wanted to put his hand inside one of the things as an experiment. But Levy had stopped him. Apparently, the enchantment was supposed to not stop until it had eaten all the material that passed its entry. But Shaggy was adamant his healing could take it. Now that he was topped off, he kind of wanted to try. Don't. Levy screamed from behind him. Seriously, do I have to explain to you why you shouldn't stick your hand in strange places? Shaggy spun to see his wife standing at the entrance to the latest magic shop. Bags hanging off her arms. She had her hands on her hips, flaring the bags out dangerously. Shaggy grinned as he put up both his hands. It's just so tempting. I mean, I've been burned, disintegrated, and had a few dermal plates burned off. Sure, it hurt like hell. But I healed without issue. What can a trash can do to me? Shaggy grumbled, but stuck his hands in his pockets. Giving Levy a smile, he asked. So where to now? Or do you finally own all the books in existence? It's all necessary, Shaggy. We need a base for our own mages, and Corrigan has some of the best books around. A few are pretty pricey, but I think they are worth the investment. Weren't we looking for Dave? So said yourself, the guy is probably fine. Besides, we need these. Levy said, shaking the bags on her arms. If you say so. Levy merely grinned as she hurried down the road. Shaggy hurried to follow her as they followed the throngs of people. Some were the tall demons from the portal, but most were mages in robes. They were rushing up and down the cobblestone streets, holding whispered conversations as they carried their books. For some reason, Shaggy felt like the entire city had a college town feel. But so far, he hadn't seen any large magical academy or anything. In fact, the largest building in the town was Corrigan's castle, followed by the barracks building in front of the castle that housed a bunch of demons. So where are we going now? Shaggy called as he followed Levy. There's another store up the way, near the front gate to town. I want to see if it has anything I missed. Really, Levy? 4 bookstores weren't enough? You need to make it 5? How many books do you need? Levy turned a mock glare at him as they kept moving. All of them. I shall not rest until I have all the books. Shaggy smirked and shook his head, but followed Levy. Stores and shops blurred past as they moved. But Shaggy was sure he saw all the staples of a fantasy setting. Blacksmiths, bakeries, stables, inns, weird magical cafes, an arena. Shaggy skidded to a stop as he saw the mass of black-robed people milling around the large sign. Levy must have stopped and turned back when he did. Because the next thing Shaggy knew, she was whispering in his ear. It's an underground arena for the mages to practice their craft. Probably like the one you have in Undertown. But you know, more magic. They take bets? Shaggy asked as he watched the crowd move. Yeah, I think so. Why you want to go play while I shop? Shaggy nodded and wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. Yeah. I want to check it out at least. If I know Dave, he is either down in the arena or at one of those cafes back there. Probably got a crowd of groupies already all. I don't think you understand how cerebral mages are. They don't celebrate physical strength the way people in Undertown do. If anything, they are using him in the arena as a guinea pig or something, Levy said, looking unconvinced. Could you use a puppy as a lab rat? Shaggy asked. Levy put a finger to her lips in thought. Maybe? How ugly is it? Go to your bookstore, love. I'll check if Dave's in the arena and maybe place a bet or two. Fine. But be prepared. Corrigan's message should pop up at any minute with the information we need. Just be aware of it. Shaggy nodded before brushing his lips on his wife's cheek and rushing off. He had to push his way past a few robed mages. But he managed to get to where the large sign indicated the arena was. Below the sign was a large brick staircase leading downward. Shaggy followed the mass of people down for a long way until he finally popped out onto a large circular platform. The platform ran all the way around, circling a large indent in the middle. Shaggy pushed toward the railing and looked down. The center of the arena was a large circle, surrounded by stadium seating. Hundreds upon hundreds of mages and demons filled the stands as people cheered and jeered the fighters in the arena. Shaggy groaned as he recognized his friend's blue armor. Dave was on the main floor of the arena, punching fireballs that a group of robed mages were throwing at him. Dave would dodge and roll around some of the magic thrown at him and then close in with the group fighting him. When he got close, he would knock a few out, sending the others scattering. Then they would try to bombard him again. Shaggy rolled his eyes as he walked around the mezzanine looking for a betting booth. He found it halfway around the large arena and took his place in line. From the stand, he could hear people shouting at expletives at his friend. Apparently, Dave wasn't a popular contestant. Shaggy waited on the line, playing with the credits he had on his person. He was pretty sure Dave was a good bet, but he wasn't sure he wanted to bet all he had. Once he was at the counter, Shaggy found himself face to eye with a large winged eyeball. Shaggy stared for a few seconds until, terrifyingly, the eyeball split in two, revealing a row of nasty-looking teeth, and spoke. "What do you want?" "I ain't got all day." "Yeah, I'm sure you're busy giving people nightmares," Shaggy's mouth said before he could catch it. The floating eyeball slammed its monstrous maw back down and glared at Shaggy. He ignored the look and threw a few credits chits on the counter. Checking the odds, Shaggy realized he couldn't find Dave's name anywhere. Neither his actual name nor the weird nom de guerre he normally used. Shaggy sighed as he realized he had to watch the eyeball talk again. "Who's the blue guy? Put this on him to win it all." "Ah, the Blue Devil. Our latest dark horse." "Are you sure?" "The guy is going at 5-to-1 odds right now. But those are going to drop. I assure you." "Why do you say that?" "He's good, I'll grant you. Especially for a non-magical being. But he hasn't fought against a fully armored and chanted demon yet. Mostly, he's been playing with the magical students who want to test out their latest and craziest arrays or runes." Shaggy snorted as he thought of the demons he had seen on the streets and in the palace. "Yeah. Place it on him and let it ride. Your funeral." The weird flying eye said through its improbable mouth. Shaggy hurried away as he heard the crowd shout in excitement again. Only for them to immediately fall into boos and jeers again. Looking down into the arena, Shaggy spotted his blue-armored friend dropping a heel kick on the final mage in the squad that was attacking him. The poor squishy mage dropped like a sack of potatoes, and Dave stood in the arena, still crouched in a combat stance. Once a buzzer went off, Dave relaxed and the surrounding noise around Shaggy doubled. None of it was complimentary to Dave. In the arena, Dave dropped his armor and ran around the arena, cheering. Oblivious to the absolute disdain a lot of the crowd had for him. Shaggy was surprised no one was throwing anything. Dave finished his running around and his side of the arena and crouched down. Shaggy started making his way down the steps toward his Dave's side of the arena. He only made it halfway before the buzzer sounded again and 2 more participants entered the ring. Shaggy thought Dave was going to get a break, but the smiling player summoned his armor again and rushed out into the arena. The 3 parties meet in the middle of the arena and squared off. Shaggy could see that Dave was up against another small group of mages and 2 beefy-looking demons. Both demons were carrying swords and looked eager to fight. Meanwhile, the mages were hurried throwing up bubbles of protection around themselves. Dave shuffled on his feet excitedly, his armor shifting on his body as he moved. Shaggy didn't like the way both magical groups were angled against Dave. But the happy-go-lucky guy was too busy staring at the demons to notice. Shaggy made it down to the rim of the arena when the buzzer went off again. The fight started with a loud explosion that made Shaggy lose sight of Dave. A burning inferno of magic blasted from the center of the arena, but it danced around the mages and the demons. Both groups smiled smugly as Dave seemingly burned to cinders. Then Dave's blue form shot forth and delivered a roundhouse to a demon's chest. The demon went flying as its partner unsheathed and swung his sword. But Dave was already gone again. Rushing toward the mages. The huddled group of mages broke apart, each throwing random spells at the oncoming Blue Devil. The demon followed Dave as he tried to corner a few of the mages. Fireballs, wind scythes, lightning bolts, and ice missile all soared through the air as Dave danced around the arena. The bombardment was so bad that the demon even took some friendly fire. Shaggy noted that Dave's armor seemed to take most of the magic pretty well, turning aside icicles and redirecting lightning bolts. But the wind sides seemed to be an issue. Bits of Dave's armor went flying every time he was hit with a stray spell. But Dave was aware enough to take those spellcasters down first. He occasionally had to stop and deal with the two demons who chopped at him with their swords. But Dave was too nimble for the big oafs. He juked around the pair, delivering fast rabbit punches and then jumping away as more spells rained down on them all. Shaggy thought it was only a matter of time before one of the demons went down. But surprisingly, Dave had dispatched most of the mages before the first demon even appeared to be flagging. Shaggy had to give it to the demons. Their skin was incredibly tough. Eventually, with only 2 mages left, Dave turned and started actively dealing with the demons. Shaggy figured his friend's stamina had to be dwindling, especially with all the running around Dave had done. A hand on Shaggy's shoulder made him spin around, claws extending. Levy's face glared at Shaggy's hand as stopped in midair. Shaggy coughed and rapidly dismissed his claws. "Really, Twitchy? Were you going to start a fight right here?" Levy asked, annoyed. "Sorry. Fights got me a bit amped. These demons are tough, but they are also too slow for Dave," Shaggy said, waving into the arena as Dave elbowed a demon in the throat and rolled away. Levy said as she glanced down. "Demon regeneration is pretty reliable. But it looks like these two are pretty young." Shaggy nodded understandingly and took in Levy's appearance again. He noticed that the bags she had been carrying were gone. "Where's your shit?" Levy chuckled and tapped a small multicolored bag on her hip. "Lesser bag of holding. I found it in the last shop. Of course, I have to maintain the enchantments or find someone that can make them permanent. But for now, it serves my purpose. Which is to carry your crap. What else is a bag of holding for?" "Oh, that was a mistake," Levy groaned as she kept her eyes on the arena. Shaggy turned in time to see Dave swinging off a demon's horns to kick him in the face. The demon seemed to take a huge amount of offense to the blow, throwing his sword away and attacking Dave with nasty slow haymakers. Dave's armored form danced backwards as the second demon tried to circle around him. Dave dodged another fireball from one of the remaining mages and gave the enraged demon 2 jabs to the ribs. The demon didn't even register the hits as he charged blindly at Dave. "Don't touch their horns?" Shaggy asked as he watched Dave leap over the charging demon. Levy winced as the 2 demons slammed into one another. "Yeah. It's like grabbing a guy's crotch." Horns are a sign of virility and prestige amongst Corrigan's demons. So wait, Dave just swung off a demon's junk? They are not literally a demon's genitals, Shaggy. Just a secondary sex characteristic. One they take very seriously. "I see that," Shaggy said as the enraged demon tossed his friend at Dave. Dave dove out of the way and rushed the demon. The demon roared and charged at Dave, arms held up to swing down on the smaller man. Both parties met and Shaggy watched as Dave flung himself into the air and spun forward twice before snapping his leg down in another heel kick. The demon caught the armored foot on a shoulder and tried to stay upright. But the force of the blow forced the demon's head into the dirt. Dave quickly came out of the kick and delivered 2 more swift kicks to the demon's head before he had to roll away again. A fireball landed where Dave had been standing, slamming into the side of the demon's prone head. "Yesh. He's got to be down now, right?" Shaggy asked as he watched the motionless demon. "I think so. Head trauma is the best way to take a Corrigan's demons out. Once they're unconscious, though, you have to take their head off quick. I mean, in an actual fight, that is. I think the demon is out as far as the arena is concerned." Shaggy nodded. "Understandable. You know, the same method might work for me? Although I've never been beheaded before. If Cog had aimed higher, we could have known." Levy joked. "No kidding. Hey, Why do you keep referring to them as Corrigan's demons? Are they just really loyal to her, or they like literally her kids or something? Levy smiled as they continued to watch the fight. They are kind of her kids. She created them, along with this pocket realm. They are based on real in-game demons, and can even evolve like the other demons do. But they are 100% loyal to Corrigan and are all magically linked with her. Shaggy nodded at the explanation and studied the remaining demon Dave was fighting. As it attempted to catch Dave with its sword, the large purple and black demon exhaled blue flames from its nose. The remaining mages tried to keep up with their own spells, but everyone realized Dave was winning. The jeering crowd grew louder as Dave knocked out the last demon and chased the mages around till he knocked them out as well. Shaggy felt that the demons weren't as bad as the talking eyeball had said. Sure, they were resilient, but nothing Dave couldn't handle. The buzzer went off again, and Dave dropped his armor, revealing the sweaty and smiling man beneath. But before he could take a victory lap, the buzzer went off again. Shaggy shouted in indignation, but he was drowned out by the cheering crowd. The arena rumbled and purple flames lit the arena from several candles placed around the sides. Levy chuckled as a thudding sound came from the opposite side of the arena. Dave armored up again as something entered the arena. Now we'll see how tough Dave really is. He better be ready to kill. What the hell is going on? Shaggy asked as a massive pure black demon stepped into the arena. It's the next evolution of Corrigan's demons. The demonic general. Levy said as the demon roared. The crowd in the arena answered back with a roar of their own as Dave and the demon squared off. Shaggy barely had enough time to suck in an excited breath before the two sides rushed at each other. Shaggy had been sure Dave would have been the faster of the two. But the almost 15-foot demon general was a fleet of foots as his armored friend. The dark-skinned demon was almost a carbon copy of its lesser brethren except for longer horns and glowing purple runes. The runes stood out on the monster's dark flesh and flashed to life as the demon charged. Its human-esque head was tilted down slightly, horns at the ready. Dave moved just as quick in his blue armor, if not a little faster. The two rushed to meet each other, and the demon held its arms out, ready to stop any attempts to flee. But Dave didn't jump away or over, instead the blue-armored player slid through the demon's legs and hopped back up behind it. Dave had enough time to slam a few hooks into the demon's thigh before he had to jump away. The demon general spun quickly, trying to catch Dave with a wide backhand. But the blow missed by a hair and Dave jumped aside, circling the demon. The runes on the demon's body glowed purple again and Shaggy asked Levy. What's with the purple tattoos? Magic stuff? Magically enhancements baked into the demon's flesh. He has to spend mana to activate them, but they make him faster and tougher. Levy answered, eyes transfixed by the battle. Shaggy nodded as he watched the demon send 2 straight punches at Dave. But his friend weaved around them and tried to get in closer. The demon general backed up, not letting his shorter opponent get inside. Shaggy hissed worriedly as Dave had to dodge a quick succession of punches. Dave was already a great fighter, but he was clearly tired. Shaggy noted that his friend's movements weren't sluggish, just more careful. Like a fighter that knows he only has so much left in the tank. Dave didn't want to commit too much and get dinged for it. The fight carried on, with the two sides chasing each other around the dirt arena. Few of Dave's blows had connected and none of the demons. But the crowd was clearly on the edge of their seats. The tension in the air was almost palpable as Dave would risk quick rushes past the demon, hitting the thing's legs and hip with quick combos before dashing away. Every time the Blue Devil dodged a return volley, the crowd would inhale almost as one. Shaggy was momentarily brought back to his youth. Images of him training in the family dojo and going to tournaments flitted through his brain. But he quickly shunted them aside as he watched Dave deliver a harsh front kick to the demon's inner thigh. The general grunted loudly and stumbled before it caught itself and tried to swing a wide haymaker at Dave. But the blue-armored player was already backing away. The exchange brought Shaggy's eyes lower to the demon's legs and its cloven feet. Can the demons not kick? I don't think I've seen one try. Levy chuckled. Ha 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 ha. I don't think so. I've never seen it either. You'd think with their goat-like legs, they'd have a killer back kick, right? Shaggy glanced at the demon's large thighs and the rough, cloven hooves. Yeah, those things could probably do some damage. This is just a war of attrition at this point, honey. I hate to say it, but unless your friend takes a big risk, he is going to tire out first. Shaggy couldn't disagree as he watched Dave rush in again and try to work the demon's leg. Unfortunately, the exit dash wasn't quick enough, and Dave was finally smacked with a ferocious backhand. Dave's blue form went sailing as the demon tried to push his advantage, chasing after his opponent. Dave twisted out of the fall and caught himself just in time for the giant demon to slam into him with his horns. Shaggy winced, and the crowd went nuts as Dave gripped the demon's head. The demon pushed the two through the dirt arena as Dave tried to dig his feet in. Shaggy didn't think the demon's horns had penetrated Dave's armor. But he didn't like the odds of that lasting. Apparently Dave didn't either, because the player stopped resisting the charge and jumped, trying to sail over the demon's hunched-over body. But the demon was too fast again. He grabbed one of Dave's legs midair and slammed Dave to the arena floor like a rag doll. Oof. Damn. Shaggy groaned in sympathy as the demon lifted Dave up by his leg for another slam. I think that's all she wrote on this one. But he did a decent job. He was just too tired. Levy said, wincing as Dave's armored body hit the arena floor again. The crowd was cheering and screaming in delight as the demon general raised its free hand in victory. Dave still hanging from his other hand. Shaggy was sure the buzzer was going to go off, but before it could, the blue devil came alive again. Dave kicked out with his free leg, catching the unsuspecting general in the eye. The giant demon roared and tossed Dave away on reflex. Dave spun out of the toss and caught himself before rushing back to the irate demon. The crowd was going nuts now, and even Shaggy was roaring at the edge of the arena. Dave rushed across the arena, right up to the demon's legs, and jumped. The general was still reeling from the eye poke as Dave leapt up to the demon's face. He put both legs on the demon's chest and gripped a horn for balance. The crowd gasped almost collectively as Dave used his free hand to punch down into the demon's face. Shaggy could see Dave's armored fist disappear as it was embedded into the demon's other eye. The demon reeled backward and roared in pain as it was blinded. The purple runes on its body flared to life as the giant tried to shake Dave loose. But the stubborn blue devil held on firm as he dragged his fist back and slammed multiple punches into the general's face. Shaggy felt Levy's hand grip his arm as they both got to their feet. The fight was on the other side of the arena and facing away from them. But they still had a clear view as the demon general tumbled to its backside. He's got to keep it up or those runes are going to heal the general, Levy said excitedly. Shaggy nodded dumbly, not really hearing as he watched Dave kick off the demon's face and flip into the air. Shaggy couldn't help but smile as he watched his friend pose in midair before spinning. Levy practically burst out laughing as she watched Dave's blue form turn into a spinning drill kick. What is he doing? Dave's voice echoed across the arena before Shaggy could answer. Koan kick. Dave's spinning blue kick rushed downward toward the demon's head. The arena watched in stunned silence as Dave flew through the air and stomped down onto the demon's forehead. Blue-purple blood flew up into the air as the demon's head was caved in from the force of the blow. But Dave didn't stop there. Somehow, the crazy player kept spinning, drilling down into the general's face as spurts of blood flew into the air. The entire arena stared in awe as the blood was slowly replaced with the dirt from the arena floor. Dave had stomped his way through the demon's human-looking face down into the dirt on the other side. Yeah. Shaggy screamed as the buzzer finally sounded and Dave stopped spinning. This time, Dave's armor seemed to dissolve instead of seep back into Dave's flesh. Shaggy was sure that his friend was done. Indeed, Dave fell to his knees and raised a hand in triumph as the crowd cheered and jeered in equal measure. Levy was jumping up and down excitedly as she gripped Shaggy's shoulder. Dave was waving to the crowd now and shaking his head. Shaggy figured things were over. But the damn buzzer went off again and everyone froze. The arena rumbled again, even as Dave was shaking his head on the arena floor. Shaggy could see his friend could barely stand. He looked down the side of the arena and judged the drop, but Levy hissed in his ear. "Leave it, Shaggy. He'll be sent to respawn and everything will be fine." Shaggy almost agreed, but then he saw the two demon generals walk out into the arena. Both were grinning evilly as they eyed Dave's tired form. Dave struggled to get to his feet and tried to summon his armor. But all that happened was blue particles float around him before disappearing. Shaggy growled. "Yeah, but how long are they going to play with their food before they kill him?" Shaggy didn't wait for an answer and flung himself over the side and down into the arena. Sure, it was all a game and Dave wasn't going to really die. But getting beaten up by two sadistic demons was probably not a fun way to go. Shaggy could hear the indignation in the crowd as he slammed into the arena floor. His knee screaming at his stupidity. Shaggy ignored the pain and raced toward Dave. Unbidden, he fell into a loping run and aimed toward the lead demon general. Both generals were oblivious to Shaggy's charge. Even as the arena crowd seemed to shout warnings. The buzzer was going crazy as Shaggy raced toward his target. He ignored the booing and the random object being thrown into the arena. He even had a few fireballs and icicles thrown at him. But he pushed it all and got ready to leap at the first general's head. Dave was on his feet with no armor as the two generals rushed at him. He was in a fighting stance. But Shaggy was unsure how powerful his friend was without it. Although that was irrelevant as Shaggy got into pouncing range. He mentally clicked the ability and let his body fling itself off the dirt arena floor and straight at the face of the demon general. His claws grew out, and he thrust them forward as he collided with the giant's head. Shaggy felt his claws bend slightly before they pushed their way through the general's head. But he didn't stop to celebrate. Instead, he took a second to line up a jump to the next demon general that was turning to look his way. Wrenching his claws free, he leapt toward the second general and raked his claws across that one face. Shaggy braced himself before he slammed into the dirt and pushed forward into a roll as he heard a loud thump behind him. Quickly gaining his feet and spinning, Shaggy saw that the first general had collapsed while the second was screaming in anger as it covered his face. Shaggy grinned savagely before running to give his friend a hand. Dave looked both happy and annoyed as Shaggy quickly offered a shoulder. "Dude, I totally had it." "Pfft, sure you did. Time to go, though." Dave nodded as they turned toward the nearest arena wall. "Yeah. Do you think this means I failed the tournament?" Dave nodded as they continued to limp away. The crowd and buzzer had almost tripled in sound. The rumbling beneath his feet brought Shaggy back around to see both demons back on their feet and glaring over at him. Apparently, the first one had healed from Shaggy's claws, penetrating into his brain. Shaggy sighed as Dave chuckled at the sight. The runes on both demons glowed purple, and they stomped their way forward when everything went quiet. Shaggy had let go of Dave as they squared off with the two demons. But now he had to grab Dave again as he staggered on his feet as a wave of energy shook the entire arena. Shaggy almost mistook it for Corrigan at first. But the woman who appeared was shorter and slightly bulkier looking, even in the dark blue robe she wore. She appeared, floating over the arena and glaring at everyone in silence. Shaggy was about to ask when Dave said happily, "Hey. It's a nice arena, lady." "Hey, lady." "Hi." Shaggy wanted to slap himself as the woman's ice blue eyes seemed to glare down at them for a few seconds. Eventually, she spun in the air and spoke in a deep, but calm, voice. "It seems that some chicanery has gone down in MY Arena." The crowd seemed to shrink in on itself as the woman spun to take in the entire arena. When her back was to them, Shaggy hauled Dave over to the nearest wall. He began looking for a way out as the woman continued. "This was supposed to be an honorably tournament to decide the mistress's lead force when we attack our enemies. But instead, I find that some of who have used it to settle confrontations with outsiders. Shaggy saw the demons bristle at the woman's words. Or maybe it was the fact that she was now glaring down at them. Both exhaled flame from their nostrils, before the one Shaggy had stabbed in the head shouted back. "Good mistress of the arena. We discovered this outsider trespassing in our tournament. So we thought it wise to teach him a lesson." The demon waved a hand in Shaggy and Dave's direction. Shaggy ignored the gesture, but Dave cried back indignantly. "Hey, I was invited, demon dude. Lady invited me." Dave waved a hand vaguely up in the air. The woman in the blue robe seemed to sigh before she floated lower. "Everyone is to leave. The arena is closed until I get this sorted out. Begone," she explained before a freezing wind flowed through the entire arena. "Love." Shaggy glanced up to see Levy just above him, looking down from the stands. Shaggy waved dumbly. "Hey. Give us a lift?" "What?" "No. Catch me," Levy shouted before tossing herself over the side. Shaggy swore under his breath and hurried to get under his falling wife. Thankfully, Levy seemed to cast some spell mid-fall that slowed her descent drastically. Shaggy managed to easily cradle her body and smiled down at her as he princess carried her back to Dave. "Put me down, you stupid dog. You just had to poke the beehive again, didn't you? You saw those demons. They were going to rip Dave apart slowly. Respawn is fine, but dying sucks, especially if you have to watch yourself get pulled apart." Levy simply smacked him as she rolled out of his arms and rushed over to Dave. The player was smiling happily as he leaned against the arena wall. He looked exhausted and was sweating profusely. Shaggy tried to think when he had ever seen Dave look so tired. The arena had exhausted him. "How do you know, lady?" Levy asked Dave excitedly. Dave blew out a breath as he laughed. "Phew, I meant her a bit after you disappeared with the scary purple woman. After y'all disappeared, they rounded us up and sent us to the city. I wandered around a bit before I met Lady outside the arena. She seemed like a nice person, so I explained I was bored and looking for some fun. She suggested the tournament and gave me this coin thingy." Dave pulled a purple coin from his jean pocket. The thing was as large as his palm and seemed to glisten in the arena light. Shaggy heard Levy gasp as Dave flipped it into the air and caught it. An exasperated sigh came from behind them and Shaggy and Levy spun to see the blue-robed woman pinching the bridge of her nose. "You were supposed to hand that in at the sign-in desk." Dave looked confused. "There was a sign-in desk?" The woman stomped her foot and growled. "Yes. That's a token to confirm that you have my authority to enter the tournament. How did you even get in here?" "Whoa. I was looking for the entrance to the arena and found these demon dudes. I told them I was looking for a fight and they lead me into the arena. First, I had to go against some mages, but then they ramped things up to the demons and then those bigger demon dudes. It was awesome." Shaggy felt a headache forming behind his eyes as they all listened to Dave's explanation. Then the thought of his credits came to mind, and he gripped his friend's shoulder. "What about the betting? How did you get on the bracket for bets if you never signed up?" The mistress of the arena snorted. "They probably wrote him in and then gave him shit odds. Don't worry, I'll see you get paid. But I'm going to need that coin back from your daft friend." Dave looked sorrowful as he flipped the coin again. Are you sure? It's the first gift you gave me, lady. I'd like to keep it. Make it a symbol of our friendship, right?" Shaggy had to rub his eyes as he watched a NPC actually blush. The blue-robed mistress of the arena seemed to curl into herself before she bounced back. She glared at Levy and Shaggy before she nodded roughly and turned. "Fine. You can keep it, Master Koan. I will find you after I get things settled here, and we can discuss what you can provide for such a favor. Do not run off." Levy nodded. "I shall keep him close, Mistress Lady. Don't worry." "I'm not worrying." "Who's worrying?" I just don't want that idiot to cause more trouble. Humph. Shaggy watched the short woman stomp away toward the demons. Once she was far enough away, he turned back to Dave. What the hell was that about? Dave tilted his head, confused. Huh? Levy chuckled again before she griped Dave's shoulder. Ha ha ha. I'll explain later. Let's get Dave somewhere he can sit down. We don't want him to pass out before Mistress Lady can go all thunder on him. Shaggy put Dave's arm over his shoulder and started walking. Now that the arena was quiet and emptying, he could see an exit opening from the arena floor. He led them that way as he asked Levy. Is her name Lady? Levy nodded. Yep, Lady Bragan. One of Corrigan's first daughters. She's the Mad Witch's daughter. No. Of course not. Just one of the first witches Corrigan taught. There are 3 of them. We call them her daughters cause of how powerful they are and as a sign of respect. All 3 of them oversee various aspects of Corrigan's dimension. But I don't think they get out to the real world much. Shaggy snorted. That explains her attachment to Dave. The tall man in Shaggy's arms started before defending himself. Hey. I'm a great guy to get attached to. Think about all the great dudes back in Undertown that love me. I'm the most outstanding dude you'll ever meet. He. Whatever you say, Dave. Shaggy shook his head and kept his mouth shut as they exited the arena floor and started searching for a staircase. Thankfully, there were several magical elevators. They piled in with a bunch of sweaty spectators and other fighters. Some of which threw Shaggy dark or angry looks. Shaggy flipped them off with a claw and stuck to himself. When the elevator dinged, Levy's hands were glowing purple and both of Shaggy's hands were claws. Just making friends everywhere you go. Aren't ya, love? Would you love me if I was more boring? Shaggy asked playfully. Levy sighed theatrically. I fear I will never get the opportunity to find out. Whatever shall I do? Love me anyway, duh. Shaggy pushed Dave, which in turn shoved Levy playfully. His wife responded by shoving the exhausted player back, making Shaggy trip slightly. But before he could respond again, their means of attack pulled away from them both. I'm not a cat toy. Y'all are adorable. But stop shoving me. Dave complained as he started for the arena seats. Shaggy stuck his tongue out at Levy before following his friend. It was probably better that they didn't go too far. Lady had said she wanted to meet Dave again and Shaggy didn't want any irate fans to take it out on Dave. But he needn't have worried. The stands were slowly emptying and the few patrons that stopped to give them the stink eye didn't hang around. The 3 of them found some seats in the arena and sat down. They were discussing random bits of game knowledge when the entire world went deathly silent. This wasn't the same silence as the crowd going dumb. This was a deep and almost profound silence that permeated everything. Soon, a purple magical image of Corrigan's head appeared before Shaggy's eyes. Levy on his left jumped excitedly before dropping back to her seat. Oh. Here we go. It's the announcement. Announcement? Dave asked. Before either Shaggy or Levy could respond, Corrigan's magical image spoke. My people. She started. We are at war. Weeks ago, I entered into an accord with the madman, Cog. Corrigan's magical face said. What was supposed to be a simple transaction ended with Cog betraying me and spitting in the face of a god. Shaggy felt zang still in the back of his mind. The blood god was like a passenger, merely watching, as Shaggy listened to the mad witch pontificate on the many failings of Cog. He glanced over at Levy and realized she had a small in-game camera drone recording over her shoulder. Which made sense. They were going to send this off to the forums and prepare for a raid of epic proportions. Vile, loathsome idiot who was stupid enough to sit on a god's throne. Corrigan continued. Her purple visage looking livid. She seemed to catch herself as she said. Ahem, with all that said, we shall invade the betrayer's realm in a matter of days. He has been found skulking at the edges of the mortal realm in his own pocket dimension. Investigations are underway to find out who was stupid enough to create a realm for the sexist pig. But that is not important. What is readying ourselves for war, my subjects. Corrigan's purple image went from being just her head to revealing her full body. Mini versions of the Mad Witch appeared in the air before Levy, Shaggy, and Dave. Looking down at the arena, Shaggy saw that the images were replicated for Lady and the two demon generals. The image struck her staff onto an unseen ground and crowed. Prepare your spells, gather your familiars, and polish your armor. To our allies in the mortal world, prepare yourselves. I shall be connecting a portal to the betrayer's realm at this location. Corrigan's image disappeared, and several images flashed through the air. There were quick glimpses of street signs, coordinates, and a scary house. Then it switched back to Corrigan's face. The Mad Witch grinned. The war is here, my subjects. Prepare and be ready to stand with your queen. To those in the mortal realm, do not be late. With those last words, Corrigan's image vanished, and the sound returned to the pocket dimension. Shaggy glanced around to see Dave smiling like a kid at Christmas, while his wife was rapidly swiping a hand through the air. She was probably racing to get her video edited and ready for the forums. Shaggy sighed and sat back in his chair. That was it. Soon they would rush toward their first in-game raid. Suddenly, his small legion seemed nowhere near ready. They had less than 10 actual players in Undertown. Most of which Shaggy hadn't even met. Ren, Vlad, Slink, and Dave were absolutely down for what was coming. But Levy and her in-game friends had been quiet. Although judging by how happy Levy looked, Shaggy was willing to bet they could count on her help. It was the unknown mages he wanted to get a handle on. He hadn't met any of them nor seen them around the bar. This is going to be so epic. Dave shouted excitedly, pulling Shaggy from his thoughts. Yeah. Except that our little legion can't exactly field a lot of people, Shaggy grumbled. Dave shrugged. Who cares, dude? We'll get more players to help, right? Yeah, but those players will look after themselves. Corrigan called this a war. We will need people to look out for us. I don't know about you, but I don't think we can count on the Mad Witch's people to watch our backs. The air suddenly filled with a chill and Shaggy widened his eyes as frost suddenly appeared on his arms. He could see his breath on the air as he spun to find the source of whatever was dropping the temperature. It didn't take long to spot Lady floating up over the edge of the arena and toward the seats. Shaggy noted that he was the only recipient of her chill spell, or whatever it was. Lady landed a short distance away, eyes locked on Shaggy. Her blue robes were ruffling softly as she used her powers. Shaggy brushed off the frost and tried not to shiver as he growled. What's up your ass, sister? Lady's eye twitched as the cold around Shaggy almost doubled. My mistress does not enjoy being called mad. Shaggy nodded as he couldn't stop a shiver going from his leg all the way to the bottom of his neck. He was almost sure he was going to be frozen to his seat if he didn't move. He was going to ease himself up when Dave cut in. Hey, lady. Did you settle things with those two demon dudes? Like, what was up with this tournament? Was it gauntlet style? Am I disqualified because Shags interfered? Lady continued to glare at Shaggy for a few more seconds before she turned her gaze to Dave. The chill around Shaggy went away, and he slowly lifted each leg. His pants were a little damp from the melting frost, but he ignored it as Lady addressed his friend. No, Dave. You were never entered in the tournament because you didn't register. You were supposed to sign in and then they'd place you in a bracket and then you would get a chance to fight. But it seems some of the more foolish members of my staff played a joke on you. They will be reprimanded. Oh. That's cool then. I was just wasting time waiting for my friends. They got whisked away by that Corrigan lady. So no need to be too harsh to your staff. Lady sneered. No. There is a need. They made a mockery of my arena and even lost me a boatload of money. Shaggy chuckled. Not many people betting on my boy, Dave, huh? Lady glared at him for a few seconds before returning her eyes to Dave. No. Apparently, he was expected to lose after the first few matches against mages. Magical supremacy is big around here. So no one thought a non-magical mutant could compete. Losing their credits will disabuse them of that notion. Damn. Dave said. I should have made a bet on myself. I didn't even think about it, though. Hee hee. You have my token, Dave. You do not need any other winnings. Oh, yeah. So what do you want me to do for it? You said you would want something in exchange, right? Lady smiled and Shaggy was sure he spotted a redness to the woman's cheeks. Yes, a token from one of the first daughters of Corrigan is a highly prized possession. An equally great service must be rendered for you to take ownership of it. Shaggy rolled his eyes and chuffed loudly. The chill came back around his feet, and he slowly stood. Hopefully, being a moving target would make it harder for the damn ice witch to pin him down. The coldness went away and Dave motioned for Lady to finish speaking. So. I have decided that you shall be my personal guard during the war. You shall stay by my side and protect me while we crush Corrigan's enemies. Shaggy started. Whoa. Wait a minute. Dave is one of the leaders of our legion. We need him with us for the raid. You can't just take him. The ice-cold chill was suddenly back and Shaggy tried to move again. But his feet were rapidly stuck to the floor. Frost built up on his clothes, followed by snow, and then solid ice. His legs were rapidly being frozen as Lady's eyes glowed blue. Before Shaggy could do anything, he was frozen in a block of ice from the waist down. Shaggy growled as he tried to move. Whoa. That is awesome. Werewolf on ice. Dave chuckled. Dave, not now. She just attacked me. I'd appreciate a little backup from my friend. Like, I get what you're saying, Shags. But her request isn't that bad. Besides, who said we can't all be ladies' guards? Or at least close to her, right? You and the others can muster up next to us, and I can stick with the pretty blue lady. Dave grinned at Shaggy. Which meant he completely missed the blushing lady's face. Shaggy rolled his eyes and tried to claw at his icy prison, but his sharp claws merely scratched the surface. The ice seemed to tighten as Shaggy attacked and he glanced up to see Lady wringing her hands coyly, not even paying attention to him. As my guard, you have to stick as close to me as possible. Your friends can do what they want. I have no control over them. Do you accept? Dave kept his grin plastered on his face as he stood up. He immediately fell back into his seat. Still a little exhausted from his fights. So instead, he raised a thumb. Of course, Lady. See you on the field. Lady blushed deeper and Shaggy thought his legs were about to be cut off. The ice was somehow crushing inward as Lady nodded rapidly. Yes. Good. Well. I will look for you on the field of battle. Good day. With those last words, Lady floated into the air and started moving away. Then she floated the other way when she realized she was going the wrong way. Annoyingly, her giant block of ice around Shaggy's leg stayed. He hissed as he rapidly clawed at the ice, getting deeper and deeper into the block. Dave was no help at all as he watched the short witch drift away. Shaggy was sure the woman glanced back 3 times as she drifted away. Dude. Stop making goo-goo eyes at the short stack of pixels and help me. Shaggy roared as he continued to claw at the ice block. Dave sighed and stood up. Dude, you gotta learn to respect the ladies. I mean, come on. One little sorry for badmouthing your queen mama, and you would have been fine. But no. You had to keep poking the magical bear. It's the smartass in him. Levy said, still swiping her hands through the air. He can't help himself. Dave, she was going to take you from the Legion. We are going to need as many people as we can get. There are going to be a bunch of players at this raid. Which is why it's a good thing that Dave just got us close to what will probably be one of the generals of Corrigan's forces. Levy said, clapping her hands and standing. Shaggy glanced between the two as they looked at him. His legs were still frozen in a block of ice. He had dug some pretty big divots, but he was far from free. Dave smiled at Levy and Shaggy before shrugging his shoulder. I don't know about all that. But Ice Lady seemed like a good person to know, you know? You did not plan all of this. I will not believe that. Shaggy yelled as he clawed at the ice. Dave scoffed. What? No way, dude. I just know how to ride the wave that comes. We now have a pretty righteous friend and a choice spot in the coming raid. Which means more epic battles and more superhero fun. Shaggy growled in his throat as he gave the ice block another slash. Glaring down at the cut, Shaggy looked up at his wife and Dave. Anytime y'all want to take a whack at this, let me know. We still have to get back and tell the others. Not to mention figure out where the hell those images were. Dave moved to kick the giant ice block, but Levy got in his way. She grinned at Dave before her hand was engulfed in purple fire. Shaggy groaned as he understood the plan. The forums are working on the location already. The video was short and easy to edit, so it's up and ready to go. We just have to let the others know and then prepare. Levy flung a small fireball at the ice and a loud popping hiss filled Shaggy's ears. Thankfully, there was no pain, but the ice didn't melt much either. Levy threw another fireball as Shaggy asked. Do you think they'll find it? I mean, that house could have been anywhere. Well, it's bound to be a spot in or around Austin. I mean, this is the first big raid that I've heard of. So people are excited and ready to put in the work. I bet we'll have the answer before we get back to Vlad and the others. What about your mage friends? I haven't really seen much of them around the bar. Levy chuckled as she threw another fireball. The steam was getting to Shaggy. My witches are fine. They were helping me get things set up at our little love nest. I've been waiting to introduce you. But you keep rushing off. Yeah. Dude has major ants in the pants. Dave chuckled. Shaggy shook his head as he heard the ice crack. He put up a hand to stop Levy's onslaught of fireballs. His skin was blistering from being so close to the heat. Waving the steam away, Shaggy could see the ice finally weakening in several spots. He jammed his claws into the ice and pulled in both directions. Soon enough, he was free and shaking out his wet pants. Can we leave now? I think I hate this place. Dave and Levy both laughed as Shaggy tried to rub life back into his legs. It was official. Magic sucked. He'd never tell Levy that, of course. Instead, he merely smiled back at them and started up the stairs. Levy and Dave followed, still chuckling at Shaggy's wet state. He was so annoyed at the two that he almost forgot about his winnings. Wait, she never mentioned my money. Shaggy griped. Well, she said that a bunch of stupid people were betting on Dave to fail. So you probably made a pretty sizable sum. Let's stop by the betting cages on our way out. Levy said. Shaggy nodded and hurried up the stairs and into the arena walkway. People were surprisingly still milling about here and there. Some looked excited, while others looked terrified. Shaggy thought it was about the upcoming war. But two mages slumped against the wall clued him in. Man, what are we going to do about classes? I have that paper on enchantments. Do you think they'll suspend everything for the war? Hell no. I can guarantee that the headmistress will want all students to continue our coursework even during the war. Shaggy glanced questioningly at Levy and she nodded her head. Apparently, magic school was rough in the Mad Witch's realm. Nearby, a few demons were excitedly talking about the blood of their enemies. Shaggy marveled at the two distinct groups of Corrigan's realms. On the one hand, you had a bunch of bored magic nerds and on the other, a bunch of warlike demon variants. He was sure it made for some entertaining times. But he just wanted to go home. He hadn't punched anything in a while. Except for the demon general, but the bastard didn't even have the sense to stay dead. It was a short walk around toward the betting cages, and Shaggy groaned. There was a large crowd surrounding the cages, all yelling while holding up their betting slips. Shaggy reached into his own and gripped the wet slip of paper. He growled low in his throat as he thought about the bastards trying to screw him. Levy placed a hand on his shoulder, calmingly. Chill, dear. We don't even know if they are going to try anything. Let's just get to the front and find out. Shaggy sighed and nodded. She was right. The trick was finding a line, though. No one was trying to maintain any sort of decorum. Instead, mages and demons were arguing over each other as several demons flitted about nervously. Shaggy groaned as he pushed his way through. But several large demons kept getting in his way. Shaggy grew his claws and had to stop himself from clawing through everyone. Levy must have sensed his aggravation as she quickly raised a hand and a purple flash of light silenced everyone. Whoa. That was neat. Dave said in the silence. Levy ignored him as she pointed at Shaggy. We got a winning ticket here. Let us get our money and we'll be on our way. Let me at him. I lost so much money. Filthy normie. Shaggy took a breath and counted down from 3. He was on 1.5 when a screech rent the air. A guttural, gnashing voice broke over the crowd as they pushed in at Shaggy and the others. The mistress has decreed that all bets will be honored. This was an unsanctioned gauntlet started by a few rogue demons. The perpetrators have been caught and are being dealt with. But if anyone else has a problem, Mistress Bragan has said to take it up with her. The surly-looking crowd backed away and Shaggy marched up to the counter. But at the last second, a large purple and black chest pushed itself into his face. Shaggy glanced upward and spotted an angry-looking demon. Take your winnings, little man. You won't have time to enjoy them. The demon grinned. Shaggy sighed and shifted his hands. His 2 claws jabbed forward into the big demon's stomach and chest, and Shaggy dragged the big guy downward while jumping. He slammed the top of his head into the demon's face. A cry of alarm went up from the crowd and Shaggy thought he heard someone say his name. He ignored it as the demon went limp on his claws. Bringing the demon closer, Shaggy headbutted the demon again. Then again. After a third headbutt, Shaggy kicked the demon away and closed his eyes. Phew. Shaggy breathed out loudly. Get it out of your system? Levy asked. Shaggy took another large inhale and exhale before responding. Nope. But I would like to leave now. Shaggy slapped his wet betting ticket on the counter and glared at the demon. The thing blinked at him slowly before one of its wings dipped below the counter. It came back up with a few cred sticks and Shaggy grabbed them out of the damn thing's wing-like appendage. Turning on his heel, Shaggy glanced down at the demon to see its face slowly healing back to normal. Damn, things are tough. Shaggy muttered. Dave chuckled. Yeah. It was probably like fighting you. Shaggy nodded as he pushed his way out of the crowd. Levy and Dave close behind him. Demons and mages gave him ugly looks, but let him pass. Shaggy was counting the seconds until he could get out of Corrigan's realm. Magic really sucked, and he was done with it. You are bullshit. What? What did I do? Dave was the one with the Tsundere, which offering us a spot in the war. What's a Tsundere? I'll explain later, Dave. Sure, Shaggy. But you still went to a pocket dimension run by one of the area's biggest villains, and you met her. Shaggy sighed. I'm sure most players who go to her realm get to interact with her. Kind of. I mean, I met her when we released her from her little prison. But she wasn't talking straight at me, Levy said. Whose side are you on? Also, she didn't talk to me exclusively. She mostly had it out with the ancient god that can apparently hijack my damn body at any time. I'm sorry. What? Ren said, looking up for what he was working with Slink. Meh. You're still alive, love, and now we have our raid against Cog. Did she mention anything about the logistics? How is this all going to work on the player side? Slink asked as he kept his handwriting on the sheet of paper he had. Shaggy, Dave and Levy all shrugged. Slink rolled his eyes and dropped his head back to the paper. Ren covered a chuckle as Vlad groaned audibly. The trip back to the den had been quick, if a little disorienting. Going through 2 portals back to back had given Shaggy a headache. Or maybe it was Levy and Dave excitedly dancing about like children at a theme park. Shaggy seemed to be the only one concerned with their legion's tiny number of actual players. He had tried to explain this concern to the others once they got back. But Vlad seemed more fixated on his bullshit luck. Although Shaggy wouldn't exactly call himself lucky. So if I understand everything, Ren started. We have a few days to prepare for a massive raid against Cog. You've already told the forums about it. And we don't know where Corrigan is going to be assembling her army. Is all that correct? Levy waved the big rhino man off. Sure, but the hive mind of the forums is on it. They've narrowed down to a few places northwest of Austin. A few speedsters are off looking. We should have the location soon. Everyone is really excited. Although there are a few guilds that are getting overly protective about stuff. That's what I'm worried about, Vlad grumbled. All it takes is a few assholes with more people than sense for them to think they can control the raid. Slink blinked owlishly as he looked up. Isn't a clear and concise command structure helpful? Shaggy chuckled. Sure, if you have a group of well-disciplined and serious gamers. Trouble is, those types often clash with the more freewheeling people. Some people are just looking for a brawl to throw themselves into. Like my dear husband. Levy interrupted. Shaggy didn't disagree. So if this raid is as big as it looks like it will be, we are going to have a lot of Type A asshole guildies bumping up against the independents. So what do we do? Slink asked, finally putting down his pen. Nothing. Ren said. This type of thing always happens. Especially on big raids. You just gotta let things work themselves out. Normally, the 2 groups will separate amicably and the raid will take place on 2 fronts essentially. So, which one are we, then? Guild. Independent. Shaggy and Vlad said at the same time. The pair glared at each other before Shaggy growled. Dude, we don't have enough people to consider ourselves an actual guild. We are, at best, a loose association of villains with an army of lackeys. Yes. Which is why we are a guild. Just because we can't field actual players doesn't mean we can't throw our lackeys at Cog. No. The fact that if we lose our lackeys, we lose our territory means that we can't throw them at Cog. Shaggy said heatedly. We can make more lackeys. Okay, but our businesses and our loyalty scores will take massive hits. It's not worth it. Slink inserted. Vlad hissed, but shut up and gulped his glass of blood. Shaggy gave him his best stink eye, but quickly brought up the next issue. We also promised to inform the professor's group. Yes, we sent a runner to the Brute clan. They'll get the word out. Shaggy nodded. I know. But that raises another issue I think we will have. This is a raid with heroes and villains taking part. We are going to have to be on the lookout for a double cross. Like, is that likely? I mean, we are all going to be kicking Cog Dude's ass, right? So the heroes will leave us alone, right? Levy cackled. Maybe during the raid. But who knows what's going to happen after? Wait. Slink said, scratching his head. Aren't raids supposed to be repeatable? That's what one of the game books I read said. Some can be, Ren explained. But this one seems more like a story or event-based raid. Something that will reshape the landscape of the underworld. I mean, Cog and the Mad Witch are about to slug it out in a magical dimension. Whatever happens at the end, it's going to change things. Not to mention our little bullshit magnet gets the last blow. Vlad grumbled. Hey, if I don't, there is going to be a furious blood god. Shaggy shrugged. How is that going to work? I mean, do we just ask the other player to hold off the last blow for Shaggy? Slink asked. Shaggy and the others at the table shared looks before bursting out into laughter. Vlad and Shaggy pounded the war table. Careful not to damage anything. Levi and Ren patted the annoyed-looking Slink on the shoulder as Dave glanced around. He was laughing, but looked confused as to why. Once everyone had control of themselves, Ren explained. Getting players to do anything is a stupid endeavor. We could ask them to hold off on the last blow. But I doubt anyone will listen. So what do we do then? Well, it really depends on the raid. But if the worst happens, we are going to have to run Shaggy to Cog as fast as possible. Yeah, but I doubt we'll have to do that. Vlad snarked again. Mr. Protagonist is probably going to have an epic battle with Cog while we all sit out and watch. You know you had the opportunity to go with us to Corrigan's realm, right? But you wanted to handle shit here. Vlad threw up his hands. I know. Even so, dude, shit just happens around you. I mean, we had our own shit going on here while you were topside. But nothing like what you see. Shaggy could only shrug. He did have a habit of attracting attention. But he put that down to him going out and looking for it. Vlad and the others were doing great work with the bar and everything. But that really didn't lend itself to epic stories. If you want the big quests in games, you got to go out and grab them yourself. Soon, the table dissolved into all of them planning for the upcoming raid. Unlike Shaggy, the others were going to need new weapons and armor. Meanwhile, Levi convinced Slink to create a magical library for her in the Legion's HQ. Shaggy was grateful that his wife's books magically flew onto the shelves once the room was finished. Levi was highly particular about where her damn books went. Dave and Ren went to sort out their own people in the Legion. So Shaggy went in search of his pack. Slink was still monitoring the Legion's dealings through the war table. But it looked like the boy was getting ready to hand things off. Shaggy was happy that the kid was coming with them on the raid. Hopefully, they could pull the kid away from managing the Legion more often. He found Sybil and Vic on the second floor of the bar. Sybil was chatting up a waitress as Vic cleaned a shiny new rifle. Shaggy did not know where the man got it. But it always made him happy when his minions outfitted themselves. Hey, boss. How's tricks? Sybil crowed as the waitress used the chance to scurry away. Nah, wait, honey. I told you. Vic chuckled. You come on too strong. I don't need dating advice from a monk. Hey, I do just fine. I just don't talk about it as much as you. Sybil flipped Vic the bird and looked up at Shaggy expectantly. Shaggy could feel their boredom through his pack link. But unfortunately, he had nothing for them. Sorry. It's just a check-in. Leadership has some big shit going down here soon. So I'm going to need everyone here on alert. Sybil scowled, but Vic nodded. That's fine, boss. Ephemera has us on Quinnica patrol. Which is stupid, because the damn pale bastards are gone. Sybil groaned. For now. But we don't know what they've got planned. Besides, we found a few pockets of them, haven't we? Sybil grunted and gave an irate nod. Shaggy scratched the back of his head as he thought about the Quinnica. But that was a future problem. He wanted to check in on the others before he did anything else. Good luck with that, boss. Sybil chuckled as she sipped at her beer. Rita has been playing Den Mother while Seacrass and the kid are off wrestling with their new friends. What about Tom? Vic stuck a thumb over his shoulder, pointing to the rooms on the backside of the building. He's enjoying his new room. Passed out as soon as he hit the bed. What the hell has he been up to? Sybil and Vic shared a look before shrugging. No clue, boss. He says he is out. Doing recon. But always comes back smelling like smoke and liquor. Then again, you could pick up that smell anywhere in Undertown. We talked to Ephemera about it. But she said to leave him alone. He's on a secret detail. Shaggy nodded. If that's what Effie said, then just leave it. I trust her. We know you do, boss. Which is why we didn't bring it to you. Shaggy talked to them for a little while longer before he returned to the base beneath the bar. The work topside was finished quickly. But below the ground, lackeys were still shifting and hauling dirt like a colony of ants. Even with Levy's new magical library, they still had plenty of room to build things out. Shaggy passed the library, then rolled shop, which was surprisingly busy. Shaggy saw the chubby little technopath barking orders at various robots. He ignored the scene and pushed on toward the 2 workout rooms they had dug out. Sounds of fighting and cheering echoed down the hall as Shaggy got closer. He had to swerve around a few overzealous lackeys. But Shaggy could feel his blood pumping as he entered the first workout room. Men and women, aliens, and mutants all crowded into the space. Some using the workout equipment they had stolen from topside, while others were crowded around the small sparring mat. Shaggy couldn't help but grin as he saw Seacrass and Stanley taking on all comers. The lanky Workwinica was looking more confident as he tossed around Paranadens and other aliens. Meanwhile, Seacrass was fighting like a lizard possessed, dashing in and out of his opponent's range. The big lizard alien apparently learned how to dodge while Shaggy wasn't looking. Shaggy felt their pride at his thoughts through the link and was about to move on when a lackey decided to get stupid. Hey! What about the little guy? I haven't seen him in here before. Shaggy turned around to see who had spoken. The room fell silent as the Shaggy scanned them. A few clearly knew who he was, but he saw a few confused faces. A couple of lackeys started whispering loudly. But Shaggy growled, silencing them all. He ambled toward the sparring mats, people shuffling hurriedly out of his way. For a few seconds, Shaggy reveled in the feeling. After getting magically owned in Corrigan's realm, it was nice to be feared once again, to feel like a predator. Then Big Mouth opened his gob again. Shaggy spun toward the voice and found the speaker. It was a dark blue alien with black hair and 3 antennae. Shaggy cracked his knuckles and pointed a finger at the loudmouth. The lackeys could use more stories to spread about him. Unfortunately, before he even got to that point, Seacrass decked the alien. The silence in the room somehow became tangible as Seacrass looked at Shaggy. The lizard was panting hard and had a wild look in his eye. Shaggy rushed over, annoyance gone as he thought his packmate was in trouble. But Seacrass shook his head, beady eyes dilating. Shaggy plucked at their bond, finding his bond with the lizard engorged and thrumming with energy. Shaggy grinned and raced towards Seacrass. He gripped the large lizard by the head and dragged him down to meet his eyes. Staring into the lizard's eyes, Shaggy was even more sure. You're about to shift. Shaggy practically cackled.